My family demanded I host 6 kids for 3 days, because I'm single and have no real life. So I flew to the Caribbean, armed my military-grade security system, and watched them freeze on my porch cameras. The video feed on my phone screen was incredibly crisp, despite the heavy, gray slush falling sideways from the miserable Boston sky. It was exactly 10:04 a.m. on Christmas Eve morning, and through the high-definition lens of my Ring doorbell camera, I had a front-row seat to the absolute greatest show on earth. I was 2,000 miles away, sitting on a sun-drenched balcony in St. Lucia, sipping a rum punch, watching my toxic family realize that their unpaid, invisible servant had just locked the gates to the castle and thrown away the key. I am Leo. I am 34 years old, and for my entire adult life, I was the family doormat, because I didn't have a wife to complain on my behalf, and because I didn't have children of my own to parade around. My time, my energy, and my money were considered community property by my mother and my siblings. But the breaking point came when I was working 80-hour weeks trying to secure a life-changing $2.5 million corporate contract for my independent cybersecurity firm, and my mother called to inform me, not ask, inform times that she was dumping 6 screaming children at my front door for 3 days so the real adults could go on a luxury wine tour. When I tried to say no, she laughed in my face and told me I had no real life. So, I decided to go find one. To understand how a son could leave his mother and his siblings standing in a brutal blizzard. To understand why I felt absolutely nothing but cold, calculated satisfaction as I watched them suffer. You have to understand the invisible, suffocating prison they built for me over 3 decades. To really paint an accurate picture of my family dynamic, I need to take you back 3 years to a Thanksgiving dinner. That single evening perfectly encapsulated my entire existence in their eyes. I had spent 7 grueling hours in my mother Evelyn's cramped, overheated, outdated kitchen. Evelyn, of course, didn't cook a single thing. She supervised with a glass of expensive Pinot Noir in her hand, critiquing the way I chopped the celery for the stuffing. I had basted the massive 2-pound turkey every 30 minutes, burning my forearm on the oven rack in the process. I peeled and mashed 12 pounds of potatoes until my shoulders screamed in absolute agony. I polished the good silver, ironed the linen napkins, and meticulously set the grand dining room table. I was physically exhausted, sweating through my nice button-down shirt, smelling of grease and sage, but as the afternoon rolled into evening, I was genuinely looking forward to sitting down, pouring myself a heavy glass of red wine, and enjoying the incredible meal I had essentially prepared entirely by myself. But when Evelyn finally rang the little silver bell to call everyone into the dining room, I walked through the archway and stopped dead in my tracks. The main dining table looked like a spread from a luxury lifestyle magazine. It was gorgeous, set with crystal wine glasses, glowing taper candles, and fine china. But there were exactly 6 chairs arranged around it. I quickly did the math in my head. My mother, my father, Arthur, my older brother, Marcus, and his wife, Vanessa, my sister, Chloe, and her husband, Greg. That was 6. Over in the far corner of the room, pushed awkwardly against the ugly floral wallpaper near the drafty hallway, was a wobbly, cheap plastic folding table covered in a paper tablecloth that had cartoon turkeys printed on it. 5 toddlers were already seated around it, banging their plastic forks, screaming, and throwing dinner rolls at each other. And there, squeezed in among the high chairs and the absolute chaos, was a single adult-sized metal folding chair. I stood there, the serving platter of turkey turning heavy in my hands. I looked at my mother. I pointed at the main table, my voice tight. "Mom, where exactly am I sitting?" She didn't even look up from pouring a generous glass of Cabernet for Marcus. She just waved her hand dismissively in the air, a gesture of profound disrespect. "Oh, there just wasn't enough room at the big table this year, Leo. Plus, Chloe's kids really need help cutting their turkey. You're a single guy, you don't mind. You're so good with them. Just grab a plate and sit over there." I did mind. I minded with every fiber of my being. I was a 31-year-old professional man. I had driven 2 hours through brutal holiday traffic to be there. I had cooked 90% of the food they were about to gorge themselves on, and I was being publicly demoted to the kids' table to act as an unpaid, unappreciated nanny, just so the real adults could enjoy a civilized, uninterrupted dinner. I looked over at my father, Arthur. I hoped, just for once in his life, he would step up and say something. He just stared down at his empty plate, completely avoiding my eyes. He was a coward who had spent 30 years letting Evelyn run roughshod over everyone to keep the peace. Then I looked at Marcus. My older brother leaned back in his plush dining chair and offered me a slow, mocking little smirk. I swallowed the heavy, bitter, humiliating lump in my throat. I didn't want to cause a scene and ruin the holiday. That was my fatal flaw back then. I always absorbed the pain to keep everyone else comfortable. So, I walked over to the plastic table. I sat in the cold metal chair. I spent my Thanksgiving wiping congealed gravy off a 3-year-old's chin and meticulously cutting dry white meat into tiny, bite-sized squares. I ate my dinner cold. I drank tap water, and for 2 hours, I listened to the clinking of crystal wine glasses, the sophisticated adult conversations, and the booming laughter coming from the main table just 10 feet away. I was in the exact same room, breathing the same air, but I was entirely invisible. That was the unbreakable curse of being the single guy in my family. It didn't matter one bit that I had busted my back to build my own independent system architecture firm from the ground up. It didn't matter that I pulled down a massive six-figure salary, that I owned prime, highly sought-after Boston real estate, or that I had a retirement portfolio that would make most corporate executives weep with envy. In my family's warped perception, because I worked from a home office, because I didn't wear a stiff suit and tie every day, and because I set my own hours, I was just playing on the computer. Marcus, on the other hand, was the undisputed golden child. He was in corporate sales. He talked excessively loud, wore flashy, oversized watches, and constantly boasted at family gatherings about his massive commissions and his golf handicaps. He drove a brand new, jet black BMW that he purposely parked diagonally right in the center of the driveway, forcing everyone else to walk through the snow just to get around it. What the family conveniently ignored, what Evelyn actively covered up, was the reality of Marcus's life. He leased that BMW. He was drowning in massive, crippling credit card debt. His marriage to Vanessa was hanging by a thread, fueled by screaming matches over money that I had personally witnessed. Meanwhile, I was quietly paying off my 30-year mortgage in 5 years. But in my mother's delusional reality, Marcus was a powerful patriarch building a legacy, and I was a directionless man-child who needed to be assigned menial chores just to justify my existence on Earth. Fast forward to November of last year. I was sitting in my home office, staring at 3 glowing monitors. I was in the middle of negotiating the absolute biggest, most complex contract of my entire career. It was a massive cybersecurity overhaul for a Fortune 500 logistics company. If I landed this deal, it didn't just mean a massive promotion of my firm's industry status. It meant a $2.5 million retainer that would completely secure my financial freedom for the rest of my life. I was working 80-hour weeks. I was surviving on black coffee, protein bars, and pure, unadulterated adrenaline. Suddenly, my phone rang, shattering my concentration. The screen flashed Mom. A cold, familiar dread instantly pooled in the bottom of my stomach. The month of November is a massive trigger for me. It is the exact time of year when my mother begins aggressively delegating her holiday stress onto everyone else in her orbit. I took a deep breath, rubbed my burning eyes, and swiped to answer. "Leo, darling." Her voice was booming through the speaker, filled with that aggressive, theatrical, fake cheerfulness that always meant she was about to demand something outrageous. "I have the most wonderful news." "Hey, Mom. What's going on?" I asked, keeping my eyes glued to the lines of code on my center monitor. "Your brother and sister are both coming home for the full Christmas week, and they are bringing all the grandbabies. Everyone is going to be here. All 6 kids." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache instantly forming. 6 kids under the age of 8. "Wow, that's a full house, Mom." "Exactly." She chirped, the excitement in her voice sounding sharp and manic. "And that is exactly why I have formulated a master plan. The condo is going to be absolute chaos, and you know how my blood pressure gets with all that noise. So, I thought, wouldn't it be absolutely lovely if the adults could have a bit of a vintage Christmas this year? Just quiet, elegant dinners, a luxury wine-tasting tour up in the mountains, a little relaxation." I stopped typing. A very, very bad feeling washed over me, chilling my blood. "Okay. And the kids? That is where you come in," she announced, her voice swelling with pride, as if she were handing me a winning lottery ticket. "Since you have that big, beautiful house all to yourself, and you're just sitting there alone, I told Chloe and Marcus that the kids could have a massive sleepover at Uncle Leo's for 3 days, from Christmas Eve morning until the 27th. Isn't that fun? It will be like a little winter camp for them." The silence in my office was deafening. I couldn't process what I was hearing. She wanted me to host 6 young children. That included Chloe's teething, screaming 8-month-old baby, and Marcus's pair of twin 5-year-old boys who were basically destructive tornadoes wrapped in human skin. She wanted me to do this for 3 full days over the Christmas holiday, completely alone. I didn't know it yet, but that phone call was the match that would finally, irreversibly burn down the bridge between us. I mistakenly thought I could reason with her. I thought logic and boundaries still existed. I was so incredibly wrong. "Mom. Wait. Let me get this straight. You want me to watch 6 kids for 3 consecutive days by myself?" My voice actually cracked. The sheer absurdity of the request knocked the wind out of me. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Leo," she scoffed, her tone instantly dripping with condescension. "It's family time. You love the kids, and let's be honest, it's not like you have anything else going on." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned stark white. "I do have things going on, Mom. I am in the final stages of a massive corporate contract. I have strict deadlines. I was planning to take Christmas Eve and Christmas Day just to sleep, order takeout, and recover. I am completely exhausted. Recover? She let out a sharp, mocking, barking laugh that grated against my eardrums. Recover from what, exactly? Sitting in your pajamas in your heated living room clicking a mouse all day? Leo, please. Grow up. Your sister spends all day managing a chaotic household. Your brother is out there grinding, driving that BMW all over the city, closing real estate deals and supporting his family. They have real stress. They need this break. I manage entire corporate security systems, Mom. If I make a single mistake in my code, companies get hacked, they face massive lawsuits, and they lose millions of dollars. My stress is very real. It's not the same thing at all. She snapped, brutally cutting me off. You don't have a wife depending on you to provide. You don't have hungry mouths to feed. You have all this free time and this massive empty house that you refuse to share. It is incredibly selfish of you to keep it all to yourself when your own flesh and blood needs you. I'm not running a charity daycare, I pushed back, my heart hammering violently against my ribs. Mom, 6 kids is an active safety hazard for one adult to manage. What if there's an emergency? What if someone gets hurt? I can't do it. I'm saying no. Her tone instantly shifted. The fake sweetness evaporated, replaced by absolute cold steel. I already told them you would do it. Chloe already went out and bought an expensive new dress for the black-tie dinner on Christmas Eve. Marcus made non-refundable VIP reservations for the winery tour. You cannot back out and ruin this for them. You shouldn't have promised my time and my labor without asking me first. Then came the silence. The heavy, oppressive, guilt-laden silence she had used as a psychological weapon against me since I was 10 years old. I didn't think you would be this difficult and cruel, she finally hissed, her voice shaking with manufactured hurt. After everything we've done for you. You know, since your Aunt Claire's funeral last year, family is all we have left. I'd hate to think you're turning your back on us, especially since you got that nice little inheritance from her and never shared it with your brother. That was a low blow. A disgusting, manipulative low blow. Mom, listen to me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I can take the older kids for one single night, Christmas Eve. That's my final offer. If you want a full 3-day break to go drink wine, you need to pool your money and hire a professional holiday nanny. Do you know how much a professional nanny costs during the holidays? We can't afford that. They charge double. But you can afford a luxury winery tour, VIP tastings, and a black-tie dinner at the Ritz? The question slipped out, sharp and biting, before I could bite my tongue. That is entirely different. We work hard and we deserve a treat. She screamed into the receiver, entirely losing her composure. Why do you always have to be so difficult? Why do you have to ruin everything for everyone else? I'm not ruining anything. I just want to live my own life, Mom. And then she said it. The words that fundamentally altered my DNA. The words that permanently severed the umbilical cord. She let out a long, cold, cruel sigh. Honey, let's be brutally honest here. You are a single guy. You work in your pajamas. You don't have a wife. You don't have children. You don't have a real times life. You have hobbies. You have little distractions. Your brother and sister, they are building legacies. They are raising the next generation. That is a real life. So, stop pretending your little computer games and your big empty house are important. You have no excuse. You are doing this. They will be at your house at 10:00 a.m. on Christmas Eve. Be ready. She hung up. I sat in my quiet, dimly lit office staring blankly at the wall. My career, my beautiful home, my independence, my struggles, my late nights, none of it was real to her. I was just a placeholder, an NPC in the grand video game of Marcus and Chloe's lives. 2 hours later, as I was staring blankly at my code, my phone pinged. It was an email notification. My Aunt Helen, a woman who lived and breathed for toxic family gossip and drama, had forwarded a message to the entire extended family. It was clearly a massive technological blunder on her part. She had hit reply all on a private thread started by my mother. The subject line read, Christmas flow and logistics. I opened it. It was a highly detailed, color-coded spreadsheet detailing the adults-only winery tours, the expensive dinners, the spa days, and the golf tee times. But at the very bottom of the email chain, there was a personal note written by my mother addressed to my siblings. I zoomed in on the text. My blood ran completely cold. Don't worry about burdening Leo with the kids. I spoke to him this morning and he practically begged me to take them. He's been feeling very lonely, isolated, and honestly quite depressed lately. Poor thing. He said watching the kids is the only thing that will make him feel like part of the family this year since he has no one else. He wants to bond with them so badly. We are actually doing him a huge favor and saving his mental health by letting him host. Just drop them off and run. He wants the quality time alone. I read it twice, Then a third time. My vision literally blurred with a rage so intense it made my teeth ache. She didn't just bully me into submission. She lied. She spun a massive, pathetic, humiliating narrative to my brother and sister to make herself look like a generous, caring matriarch, and to make me look like a desperate, lonely, clinically depressed loser begging for their table scraps. If I called my siblings right now to tell them the truth, it wouldn't matter. Evelyn would just spin it. She would cry and say I was having a mental breakdown. She would say I promised to help and then selfishly backed out at the last minute to ruin their Christmas. In this family, the narrative was rigged. I was already the villain if I said no, and the pathetic charity case victim if I said yes. I picked up my phone and dialed the only person on earth I trusted. Alias, my best friend since our college dorm days, and conveniently one of the most ruthless, highly paid defense attorneys in Boston. She said, "What?" Elias barked through the speakerphone after I laid out the entire situation and read him the email. "She told them you have no real life. And she told the whole family you begged to watch the kids because you're depressed?" "Yes," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Leo," Elias said, his voice dropping an octave, slipping into his courtroom tone, "if you cave to this, if you open that door on Christmas Eve, you are not a son. You are a doormat. Actually, you're worse than a doormat. You're a utility. You're the plumbing. They only notice you when you stop working." "I know," I replied. "I'm not doing it. I'm leaving. But Elias, I need legal advice right now. If they drop 6 kids on my porch and I am not physically home, is that legally on me? Can they hit me with a lawsuit? Can I be arrested for child abandonment or endangerment?" Elias chuckled, a dark, dry, purely professional sound. "Leo, listen to me carefully. Unless you sign a document accepting guardianship or you physically open that door and take the children into your care, you have absolutely zero legal obligation. If they drive up and leave those kids on an empty porch in Boston in December without verifying you are there to take custody, they are the ones committing child abandonment. They are the ones endangering minors. But you need to make it explicitly, undeniably clear that you are not on the premises and you are not accepting responsibility. Leave a paper trail." "Done," I said. "Do not warn them," Elias instructed, his voice dead serious. "If you warn them you are leaving, they will show up early. They will barricade you in. They will weaponize guilt until you break. You have to go full ghost protocol. You have to let them crash their car straight into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. Ghost protocol?" I repeated. I liked the sound of that. I hung up, opened a new tab on my browser, and went to an airline website. I found a first-class, one-way ticket to St. Lucia leaving on the evening of December 23rd. The price was astronomical. $6,500. A week ago, I would have balked at the price and closed the laptop. Today, I didn't even blink. I typed in my credit card number and hit confirm. I was about to show my mother exactly what my fake life could buy. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in psychological endurance and deception. I employed a tactic Elias had taught me called the Grey Rock method. The premise is simple. When dealing with a narcissist or a manipulator, you make yourself as boring, compliant, and uninteresting as a literal gray rock. You give them absolutely zero emotional reaction to feed on. So they lose interest in provoking you. Every time Evelyn texted me, I replied with single affirmative words. "Are you excited for the kids?" "Yes." "Did you buy the expensive organic milk for the twins?" "Done." "Make sure you lock up your fragile things. You know how Marcus's boys are. Handle it." I didn't ask questions. I didn't argue. I didn't show an ounce of resentment. I just let her project her perfect, twisted reality onto my silence. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was systematically and ruthlessly dismantling my life in Boston. I contacted my corporate clients, finalized the coding for the massive security project, and informed them that I had a sudden, severe family emergency and would be completely off the grid for 2 weeks. I set my email to an ironclad autoresponder. The absolute hardest part of the deception was fabricating the physical evidence. Evelyn is incredibly paranoid and controlling. On the evening of December 21st, she texted me demanding photographic proof. "I want to see the sleeping arrangements. I need to make sure there are enough blankets for the twins. They get cold at night." I stood in my living room looking around at the chaos. The room was currently filled with heavy cardboard boxes because I was packing away my expensive gaming rig, my multiple VR headsets, my antique glass coffee table, and my expensive sound system. Anything that 6 rampaging, undisciplined children could potentially destroy was being carefully wrapped and locked inside a heavy-duty reinforced storage room down in the basement. I panicked for a split second. If I told her I was redecorating, she would get suspicious. Then, an idea hit me. I scrolled frantically back through my phone's camera roll. 2 years ago, I had hosted a fun movie night for Elias and his young nephews. I found a photo I had taken of my living room floor. It was covered in thick plush air mattresses, fluffy blankets, and a massive makeshift pillow fort. It looked incredibly cozy, inviting, and chaotic. I sent the photo to my mother without any context. Looks good, she replied 3 minutes later. Make sure you wash those sheets. They look dusty. See you on the 24th. She bought it hook, line, and sinker. The sheer, blinding arrogance of her assumption that I would just obey her every command, blinded her to the fact that I was actively, methodically laying a trap. On the afternoon of December 23rd. The sky over Boston turned a bruised, angry, threatening shade of purple. A massive winter storm was rolling in off the Atlantic. The temperature was dropping fast, the wind howling through the bare trees. Inside my house, it was dead silent. I had finished prepping the decoy. I went down to the basement and completely shut off the main water valve to the house. If my brother somehow managed to break a window and get inside, which he was arrogant and volatile enough to try, they wouldn't be able to flush the toilets, run the sinks, or take a shower. I wasn't going to risk coming home to tens of thousands of dollars in water damage just because a toddler left a faucet running in the upstairs bathroom. I walked over to the digital thermostat on the wall. I lowered it to 50 degrees. That was just warm enough to keep the pipes from freezing and bursting in the walls, but uncomfortably, bone-chillingly cold for anyone trying to hang out inside without a heavy winter coat. I unplugged the Wi-Fi router and hid it in a drawer. I unplugged all the televisions. I walked through the empty rooms, checking the heavy window locks one last time. It felt exactly like I was abandoning a fortress before a siege. My last piece of the puzzle was my next-door neighbor, Mr. Vance. He is a 74-year-old retired Marine who serves aggressively on the neighborhood HOA board and absolutely despises noise. He particularly hates when my family visits because Marcus always parks his obnoxious BMW partially on the edge of Vance's pristine, manicured lawn. I threw on my heavy winter coat, grabbed a $250 bottle of aged bourbon from my liquor cabinet, and walked over to his house, the snow already crunching under my boots. Mr. Vance, I said when he opened the door, his eyes immediately dropping to the bottle of liquor in my hand. I am leaving for the Caribbean for the holidays. My family is confused about my schedule. They might show up tomorrow morning with a lot of very loud children. He grunted, reaching out and taking the bourbon. Are they going to be screaming on my property? Is that idiot brother of yours going to park his car on my grass again? Probably, I said flatly, looking him dead in the eye. If they show up and cause a scene, please feel free to call the police immediately. I give you my full, explicit permission to report a disturbance or a trespass. A slow, terrifying, highly satisfied grin spread across the old man's weathered face. Son, that is the best Christmas present anyone has ever given me. Have a good trip. I walked back to my empty porch. The Uber app on my phone buzzed. My driver was 3 minutes away. I pulled out the note. I hadn't handwritten it because I didn't want my mother or my siblings analyzing my handwriting for any signs of weakness, hesitation, or emotional distress. I had printed it in heavy, aggressive, size 24 font. I used thick, clear packing tape to secure it to the inside of the glass storm door. You could read it perfectly from the porch, but you couldn't rip it down or destroy it without physically breaking the glass to get inside. I stood back and read it one last time. Mom. Since I have no real life, I decided to go find one. I am not in the state. The house is secured. The alarm is armed. The police have been notified of potential intruders. Do not break in. Merry Christmas. Leo. I stared at the paper. It felt brutal. It felt incredibly final. It was the absolute end of an era. My phone buzzed in my hand again. Uber arriving now. I pulled the heavy front door shut, hearing the satisfying heavy click of the latch. I locked the deadbolt. I walked down the driveway as the snow began to fall heavier, swirling around the streetlights. I didn't look back at the house. I opened the door to the waiting SUV and slid into the warm back seat. Sitting in the luxury airport lounge an hour later, drinking complimentary champagne, I opened the security app on my phone. I checked the camera feed. My front porch was dark, cold, and entirely empty. The printed note stood out like a white beacon against the dark glass. I adjusted the app settings. Motion alerts. On. Volume, max. I boarded the plane, settled into my massive lie-flat pod, and put on my noise-canceling headphone. As the jet engines roared to life and the plane lifted off the runway, leaving the freezing, miserable grid of Boston far below me, I closed my eyes. Somewhere down there in the suburbs, Evelyn was probably bragging to her friends on the phone about her upcoming luxury wine tour, completely unaware that she was driving a high-speed train straight into a concrete wall. Update 1. I want you to picture the exact, precise moment a narcissist realizes they have entirely lost control of their carefully constructed universe. It does not happen quietly. It does not happen with a moment of self-reflection or a graceful acceptance of defeat. It is a spectacular, chaotic, and incredibly loud implosion. And thanks to my high-definition Ring security cameras, properly angled and recording with crystal-clear audio, I had a front row seat to every single agonizing second of it. As I sat on my sun-drenched balcony in Street Lucia, The tropical heat warming my skin, I kept my eyes completely glued to the live video feed on my phone screen. Over on my front porch in freezing, blizzard-battered Boston, my mother, Evelyn, was staring at the printed note I had securely taped to the inside of the glass storm door. The words seemed to physically strike her across the face. She staggered backward, her expensive designer boots slipping dangerously on the icy concrete of the porch. "What does it say?" my sister Chloe demanded, shivering violently as the bitter wind whipped her thin, stylish winter coat around her legs. She was holding her screaming 8-month-old baby tightly against her chest, shifting her weight from foot to keep warm. Chloe always dressed for the aesthetic of a holiday, never for the actual weather. Marcus pushed past our mother, his face turning a mottled red with a volatile mixture of the freezing cold and his own rapidly mounting rage. He leaned in close to the glass, squinting his eyes at the bold black text. I watched his lips move as he read the words out loud to the rest of the freezing family. "Mom. Since I have no real life, I decided to go find one. I am not in the state. The house is secured. The alarm is armed. The police have been notified of potential intruders. Do not break in. Merry Christmas. Leo." A heavy, suffocating, absolute silence fell over the porch. For a brief moment, the only sounds were the howling winter wind tearing through the bare oak trees and the relentless, piercing crying of Chloe's baby. For a full 15 seconds, nobody moved a single muscle. They just stared at the piece of paper, their brains completely failing to process the reality of the situation. The invisible servant had not only left his post, but he had actively locked the gates behind him. "He left?" Chloe finally shrieked, her voice cracking and pitching upward in sheer panic. "What do you mean he left the state? Mom. You said you explicitly spoke to him yesterday. You told us he begged to watch the kids. You said he was desperate for the company." Evelyn's face turned an unhealthy, grayish shade of purple. The beautiful, generous illusion she had carefully crafted for her golden children was evaporating right in front of her eyes. "I did speak to him," she insisted, her voice shrill. "He is lying. He is playing some sort of sick, twisted joke because he is mentally unstable. Leo, open this door right now." She began hammering her gloved fists against the reinforced safety glass. The loud thudding sound echoing sharply across the quiet, affluent suburban street. Marcus spun around on his heels, pointing a thick, leather-clad finger directly at our mother's face. "Did he agree to this arrangement or not, Mom? Because that note specifically quotes you. No real life. That sounds exactly like something you would say to him to put him in his place." "I never said that to him in my entire life." Evelyn lied without missing a single beat. It was truly terrifying how effortlessly the lies tumbled out of her mouth, even when she was backed completely into a corner. "He is having a psychological breakdown. Marcus, look around the yard. Find a heavy rock. Break the side window. We need to get these kids inside the house before they get frostbite." Marcus took a massive step back, holding his hands up defensively and looking at our mother like she had completely lost her mind. "Are you absolutely insane? Look at the corners of the porch. He installed cameras. The note specifically says the alarm is armed and the cops are notified. If I break a window, a blaring siren goes off and the police will be here in 3 minutes. I am not getting arrested on Christmas Eve and dealing with a massive lawsuit because you lied to us about your free babysitter." "My dress," Chloe wailed, bouncing the screaming baby in a frantic, uncoordinated rhythm. "I have a $300 dress sitting in the trunk for the black tie dinner at the Ritz tonight. Where are my kids supposed to sleep? We have to be at the luxury winery by noon tomorrow. There is no winery tour for any of us if we have 6 young kids permanently attached to our hips." Marcus roared, violently kicking a heavy snow boot against the brick pillar of my porch, sending a chunk of ice flying into the yard. "This entire trip is ruined. Mom, your condo is an 800 square foot shoebox. We cannot fit 3 adults and 6 kids in there. It violates basic fire codes." Before Evelyn could formulate another desperate lie to regain control, the heavy wooden front door of the house next door swung open. Mr. Vance stepped out onto his porch. He was wearing a thick red flannel bathrobe and a pair of sturdy winter boots. He was holding a steaming mug of black coffee, and he looked absolutely delighted by the chaotic spectacle unfolding on my property. "Hey!" Mr. Vance barked, his raspy voice cutting through the wind like a serrated knife. "Keep it down over there. People are trying to enjoy their peace and quiet." Evelyn instantly, almost reflexively, plastered on her fake high society smile, though her jaw was visibly trembling from the cold and the sheer humiliation. "Mr. Vance, so terribly sorry to disturb you this morning. Leo seems to have forgotten we were coming today. He must have stepped out. Do you happen to have a spare key he left with you? Or perhaps a ladder so Marcus can check the upstairs bathroom window?" Mr. Vance took a slow, highly deliberate sip of his coffee, savoring the moment. "He didn't forget a damn thing, Evelyn. He knocked on my door yesterday, told me you people might show up and try to cause a scene. He is in the Caribbean right now, left yesterday afternoon on a flight out of Logan. He also told me that if you tried to break into his property, I should immediately call the police and report a trespass in progress. Evelyn's fake smile melted entirely off her face, leaving behind a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The Caribbean? The word left her mouth like a vile, burning curse. Yep, Mr. Vance said cheerfully, raising his coffee mug in a mock toast. Now, I highly suggest you pack up those screaming kids and get your massive vehicles off his driveway before I dial dispatch. I already have my phone right here in my robe pocket, and I am itching to use it. I watched on my screen as the absolute crushing reality of their situation finally hit them all at once. They had zero leverage. They had no free, compliant labor. They had no luxury vacation. They were locked out in the bitter cold. Their plans were incinerated, and the entire wealthy neighborhood was watching them unravel. Marcus threw his hands up in the air in total bitter defeat. Get in the cars. He snapped at his wife, Vanessa, who had been standing silently by the BMWs looking absolutely furious and embarrassed. We are going to Mom's place. Move it. My condo is not child-proofed for toddlers. Evelyn wailed, trailing pathetically after him as he marched back to his car. I have antique vases everywhere. I don't have nearly enough food for 9 people. Then you better start driving to the grocery store, Mom. Marcus yelled back over his shoulder. I watched them angrily, violently throw their heavy, expensive suitcases back into the trunks. The doors slammed shut. The engines revved loudly. Slowly, miserably, the 2 massive vehicles backed out of my long driveway and disappeared down the snowy street, leaving behind deep tire tracks in the fresh snow. The porch was empty again, save for my printed note, which was flapping gently in the icy wind, acting as a permanent, silent monument to my newly established boundaries. I locked my phone screen and let out a long, shuddering breath. The intense physical tension that had been coiled tight in my neck and shoulders for weeks finally released. Right at that exact moment, my phone buzzed with a completely different notification. It wasn't an angry, threatening text from my family. It was a secure, encrypted email from the CEO of the logistics corporation I had been consulting for over the past 6 months. I opened the message, my heart rate picking up a slightly different rhythm. Leo, I just got out of the final executive board meeting. The final stress tests on the new security architecture you built came back absolutely flawless. You caught 3 major, critical vulnerabilities that our previous security firm completely missed. The board officially approved your contract this morning without a single dissenting vote. The promotion of your firm to our primary security vendor is finalized and legally binding. Your new salary structure and the initial $2.5 million retainer have been wired directly to your business account. Enjoy your vacation. You earned every single penny of it. I read the words until the letters blurred together. $2.5 million. A massive, industry-defining promotion. My mother had looked me dead in the eye and told me I had no real life. She told me I was playing irrelevant computer games in my pajamas. She told me I was a failure because I didn't fit into her narrow, outdated, superficial definition of success. But while she was currently driving through a dangerous blizzard to cram 6 crying children into a tiny, fragile apartment, I was sitting on a tropical island holding a finalized contract that guaranteed I would never have to worry about money, a mortgage, or a boss ever again. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to argue with her. Success is the absolute loudest, most devastating revenge you can ever serve to people who actively want to see you fail. Update 2. I thought the worst was over. I thought they would just sulk in that tiny condo, eat frozen dinners, and leave me completely alone. I was so incredibly wrong. The real explosion was still hours away. To truly understand the absolute chaotic hellscape that became of my mother's highly anticipated vintage Christmas, you have to understand the specific layout and nature of her real estate. Evelyn lives in a highly restrictive, upscale community specifically designed for seniors. Her condo is exactly 800 square feet of purely aesthetic living space. It is packed wall to wall with incredibly fragile, wildly expensive porcelain figurines, sharp glass coffee tables, and pristine white linen couches. It is the absolute worst possible environment on planet Earth for 6 bored, sugar-fueled, exhausted children who have been permanently trapped indoors by a raging blizzard. I didn't have to guess what was happening in that condo. I had a highly reliable spy on the inside. My Aunt Helen, the exact same woman who accidentally forwarded me the incriminating email containing my mother's lies, is a woman who deeply thrives on chaos, provided it isn't happening to her directly. Starting at around 2:00 the afternoon on Christmas Eve, Helen began texting me a live play-by-play commentary of the disaster unfolding at Evelyn's place. 2:15 p.m. Helen. Leo, you are an absolute legend. I have never seen your mother this furiously unhinged. Chloe's twins were running down the narrow hallway and just knocked over a $2,000 crystal vase. It shattered everywhere. Evelyn is locking herself in the bathroom to cry. 4:30 p.m. Helen. The non-refundable reservations at the Ritz were officially cancelled. They lost the entire deposit. Marcus is pacing the living room like a caged animal. Vanessa is threatening to book a luxury hotel downtown, but everything is completely sold out because of the storm. The kids are screaming because they want to go to your house and play video games. 6 p.m. Helen. Dinner is frozen pizza and boxed macaroni. Evelyn is refusing to come out of her bedroom. Marcus is drinking heavily from a bottle of bourbon he found in the cabinet. Chloe is crying because her baby won't sleep in the portable crib. I sat at the resort bar eating fresh pineapple and reading the text with a profound, undeniable sense of dark amusement. They were experiencing the exact stress, the exact noise, and the exact chaos they had fully intended to jump onto my shoulders without a second thought. They were suffocating in the bed they had made. At 7:00 the evening, I decided it was time to officially drop the bomb. I wanted them to know that I was not hiding in shame. I wanted them to know that I was absolutely thriving. I ordered another expensive rum punch. I positioned my phone camera perfectly on the table. I framed the crystal clear swimming pool, the swaying palm trees, the brilliant orange and purple setting tropical sun, and my tropical drink resting on the glass table. I snapped the photo. I opened the massive family group chat, which currently had over 30 unread, furious, demanding messages in it from Chloe and Marcus. I attached the photo of my Caribbean paradise. I typed a single, calculated caption, "Currently busy living my fake life. The view is spectacular. Figure it out yourselves." I hit send. Then, I immediately went into my phone settings, turned off my cellular data, and put the device on strict do not disturb mode. I slipped the phone into my pocket, walked into the resort's luxury steakhouse, and ordered a massive bone and ribeye for one. I had a phenomenal, peaceful evening, but back in freezing Boston, my photo was the lit match that finally hit the powder keg. I found out the exact details of what happened next directly from the official police report, and from a very frantic, highly entertained phone call from my lawyer, Elias, the following morning. Around 9:00 on Christmas Eve, Marcus had consumed roughly half a bottle of expensive bourbon. He was trapped in a tiny living room, listening to 6 kids scream and fight, while his wife Vanessa continuously berated him for ruining their holiday and failing to manage his own family. His massive ego, already incredibly fragile from his mounting debts and his rapidly failing career, completely snapped in half. He decided, in his drunken, arrogant, entirely flawed logic, that he was going to physically take back control of the narrative. He was going to break into my empty house, secure a quiet place to sleep away from his screaming children, and steal my expensive electronics to entertain the kids the next day. He grabbed the keys to his leased BMW, completely ignoring the severe winter weather warnings flashing on the television, and drove dangerously through the blinding blizzard back to my neighborhood. Marcus parked his BMW aggressively on Mr. Vance's snow-covered lawn, doing it purely out of spite because he knew how much the old man hated it. He stomped heavily up my driveway, bypassed the front porch entirely to avoid the camera, and waded through waist-deep freezing snow to get to the side of my house. He found a small basement window that was slightly obscured by a large evergreen bush. He pulled a heavy metal tire iron from his winter coat and smashed the glass. What Marcus, with his arrogant business degree and his flashy suits, completely failed to understand was the exact nature of my profession. I build military-grade, highly sophisticated security architectures for multi-billion-dollar corporations. My personal home was not protected by a cheap, off-the-shelf alarm system you buy at a hardware store. It was wired with a custom-built, multi-layered security grid. The exact millisecond the glass shattered, and the window frame breached, the system fully engaged. It didn't just beep pleasantly. It unleashed a deafening 120 decibel localized siren that sounded exactly like a military air raid warning. Simultaneously, every single exterior LED floodlight on my property activated at maximum capacity, bathing the side yard in a blinding, strobe-like white light designed to disorient intruders. Marcus panicked completely. He tried to frantically crawl through the broken window, tearing his expensive designer coat on the jagged edges of the glass and slicing his arm. But the system had instantly bypassed any warning calls to my phone and sent an automated intrusion alert directly to the local police precinct dispatch. Mr. Vance, who had been sitting in his living room reading a book and waiting for exactly this kind of nonsense, also called 911 the second the siren started blaring. Less than 4 minutes later, 2 police cruisers came sliding dangerously down the icy street, their red and blue lights reflecting violently off the falling snow. Officer Miller, a veteran cop who absolutely did not tolerate nonsense or property crimes in his wealthy jurisdiction, drew his weapon and marched quickly up the snowy driveway. They found my brother, the golden child, the highly successful patriarch, stuck halfway through a broken basement window, bleeding onto the snow from a cut on his arm, reeking heavily of cheap bourbon, and completely blinded by the flashing strobe lights. Officer Miller didn't care about Marcus's slurred excuses. He didn't care that the massive BMW was parked on the neighbor's lawn. He dragged my brother aggressively out of the window frame, slammed him face first into the freezing snow, read him his rights, and ratcheted a pair of heavy steel handcuffs tightly around his wrists. They threw him into the back of the freezing cruiser. At 2:00 inches the morning on Christmas Day, my mother had to put on her heavy winter coat over her silk pajamas, drive her SUV incredibly slowly through a dangerous, blinding blizzard, and walk into the sterile, freezing, brightly lit lobby of the local police precinct. She had to swallow her massive pride and beg the desk sergeant not to press felony breaking and entering charges against her golden son. Because it was Christmas morning, and because Evelyn cried hysterically, lied profusely, and claimed it was a simple family misunderstanding over a lost key, the police eventually released Marcus with a severe warning and a formal citation for public intoxication and malicious property damage. But they made it explicitly, legally clear that if he stepped one single foot onto my property again, he would be facing a massive lawsuit and immediate jail time. The humiliation for my mother was absolute. But the consequences for Marcus were far worse than a simple citation. When he finally walked back into the cramped condo, smelling strongly of alcohol, sweat, and a jail cell, Vanessa completely lost her mind. She started screaming about filing for divorce right there in the narrow hallway. She threatened that if he ever got a criminal record, she would hire a ruthless lawyer, fight for full custody of the twins, and take absolutely everything he owned. The golden child's perfect, highly curated life was unraveling at the seams, and I wasn't even in the same time zone to take the blame for it. The physical confrontation at my house was over, but the public relations war was just about to begin. I stayed in Street Lucia for a full 7 days. I extended my trip by 2 extra days simply because I could easily afford it with my new salary, and because the absolute silence of my phone was highly addictive. During that time, the battlefield shifted from my snowy front porch to the digital arena. When narcissists lose total control of a situation in private, they immediately and desperately seek validation in public. They have to control the narrative at all costs, spinning themselves as the tragic victims of someone else's cruelty. On the morning of December 26th, my sister Chloe launched the first major strike. She posted a massive, emotionally manipulative, highly exaggerated status on Facebook, intentionally tagging dozens of extended family members, church friends, and community neighbors to ensure maximum visibility. I opened the app while sitting at a beachfront cafe, drinking iced coffee, and read the post. I am absolutely heartbroken today. I never air family laundry in public, but the pain is just too much to bear in silence. To travel all this way for a family Christmas, only to be locked out in the freezing snow with my innocent babies. I don't understand how someone could be so cruel and heartless to their own flesh and blood. Family is supposed to be absolutely everything. We are safe now, thanks to my amazing mother opening her home to us. But please hug your loved ones tight today because you never know when someone you trust will completely turn their back on you for no reason at all. It was a brilliant masterclass in victimhood. Within minutes, the post gathered dozens of sympathetic comments. "Oh my God, Chloe, what happened? Who locked you out? Praying for your beautiful family, so glad your mother was there. That is disgusting behavior. You deserve so much better than that." Then, Evelyn chimed in on the comments, twisting the knife further to protect her own image. Some people are just too selfish and damaged to understand unconditional love. We are making the best of it despite the tragedy caused by Leo. We just pray he gets the psychological help he clearly needs to fix his hardened heart. I sat there sipping my coffee, feeling a cold, highly calculating focus settle over my brain. For years, I had let them completely control the story. When Aunt Claire passed away 2 years ago and left me a substantial inheritance because I was literally the only person in the family who actually visited her in the nursing home, Evelyn told everyone I had manipulated a dying woman. I stayed completely silent at the funeral to keep the peace and avoid a scene. I let them paint me as the greedy villain to protect the family image. But I wasn't that scared, compliant, invisible kid anymore. I was a man with a massive corporate contract, immense financial security, and absolute undeniable proof of their deception. I decided it was time to nuke their carefully crafted narrative from orbit. I didn't write an emotional status. I didn't defend my character or try to explain my feelings. I just used cold, hard facts. I opened my phone's gallery and found the screenshot I had saved of the email Evelyn had sent to the family. The specific email where she explicitly stated that I had begged to watch the kids because I was incredibly lonely and depressed. I also took a screenshot of a text message from Evelyn from a month prior where she had demanded I hand over part of my inheritance to help pay off Marcus's leased car so he wouldn't look bad. I posted the screenshots not on my own page, but directly into the public comment section of Chloe's victim post. Right under Evelyn's comment about my hardened heart, I typed a very brief, incredibly cold reply. Let's tell the whole story, shall we? Mom told me I have no real life because I am single and childless. She tried to force me to watch 6 kids for 3 days entirely alone so you all could go on a luxury wine tour. When I repeatedly said no, she lied to you. She told you I begged for this. I didn't. See Exhibit A below. I am a 3-4 year Old professional. I am allowed to go on vacation with my own money. You assumed I would just obey and be your unpaid servant. That massive miscalculation is on you. And Mom, regarding your comment on my mental health, you seemed fine with it when you were demanding my inheritance to bail Marcus out of debt. See Exhibit B. I hit enter. The reaction was instantaneous and explosive. The Facebook algorithm immediately pushed the comment to the top because of the high engagement and the photo attachments. The sad reactions on Chloe's post immediately turned to wow and shocked reactions. Cousins who had previously judged me harshly started replying in real time. Wait. Aunt Evelyn said Leo volunteered? She completely lied? My lawyer, Elias, commented from his professional business account, adding weight to the situation. The receipts do not lie. Enjoy Street Lucia, Leo. Call me if they try anything else. But the absolute most satisfying moment of the entire ordeal was the immediate defection of Aunt Helen. Helen saw the tide turning rapidly. She saw that Evelyn was exposed as a manipulative liar in front of the entire community, the church, and the extended family. To save her own social standing, Helen immediately flipped sides. Helen commented, her words practically dripping with fake outrage. Evelyn, I cannot believe you lied to all of us about Leo. You made him out to be depressed and lonely just so you could go drinking at the Ritz. Shame on you for treating that boy like a servant and lying to your own sister. It was a total, unmitigated narcissistic collapse on a public forum. The public humiliation was so severe, so undeniable, and so completely documented that Chloe panicked. Less than 30 minutes after I posted the receipts, the entire Facebook post was deleted, completely erased from the internet. But the damage was already permanently done. The truth was out. The Golden family was exposed as a group of manipulative frauds who tried to exploit their own brother and then lied about it to cover their tracks. The silence that followed on my phone was the most beautiful, peaceful sound I had ever heard. No more angry texts. No more voicemails demanding I fix their problems. They were absolutely terrified of what else I might expose if they pushed me any further. I flew back to Boston on the 2nd day of January. When my Uber pulled up to my driveway, the snow had mostly melted into a dirty gray slush. I walked up to my front porch. The printed note I had taped to the glass was gone, likely ripped down in a drunken rage by Marcus before the police took him away in handcuffs. The side basement window was boarded up with thick plywood, courtesy of a trusted local contractor I had hired remotely while sitting on the beach. I unlocked the brand new deadbolt and stepped inside. The house smelled slightly stale from being closed up, and it was freezing cold, but it was incredibly safe. Nothing of value was destroyed. The silence in the rooms was absolute magic. I walked down to the basement, turned the main water valve back on, and bumped the digital thermostat up to a comfortable 70 degrees. I unpacked my suitcase, brewed a fresh pot of expensive coffee, and immediately went back to work, integrating the new security protocols for my corporate client. I waited for the storm to hit. I fully expected Evelyn to show up banging on the door, demanding apologies for the public humiliation on Facebook. But one day passed, then 2 days, then a full week, nothing. It was the gray rock method in reverse. They didn't know how to handle me anymore. The old psychological buttons they used to press the guilt, the family obligation, the deep-seated fear of being an outcast simply did not work on me anymore. The public shaming had backfired spectacular. I was a fortress, and they had absolutely no weapons left to breach the walls. Finally, on the second Sunday of January, my Ring doorbell chimed. I checked the camera feed. It was Evelyn. She was alone. She was standing on the porch holding a large plastic Tupperware container. It was the universal unspoken peace offering of the manipulative mother, a homemade heavy casserole. I took a deep breath, unlocked the heavy door, and opened it. She looked 10 years older than when I had last seen her. Her usually perfectly coiffed hair was flat and dull. The arrogant, commanding spark in her eyes was completely gone, replaced by a weary, highly cautious exhaustion. "Hi," she said softly, refusing to make direct eye contact. "Hi," I replied. I did not step aside. I stood squarely in the doorway, physically blocking her from entering my sanctuary. "I brought you some baked ziti," she said, holding the container out with slightly shaking hands. "Thanks," I said, taking it from her. I didn't smile. "Is that all, Leo?" she sighed, a heavy, highly dramatic sound designed to elicit sympathy. "Can we please stop this? It's been an absolute nightmare. Your brother is facing massive legal bills from his lawyer to keep the charges off his record. Vanessa is actively talking to a divorce attorney, and half the church congregation won't even look me in the eye. I haven't slept in weeks." "That sounds incredibly difficult for you," I said, my voice completely neutral. I offered absolutely zero empathy. "Your brother and sister are furious with you, but I told them to drop it. I told them we need to forgive and forget." "How incredibly generous of you," I replied dryly. I don't understand what happened to you," she pleaded, looking up at me with genuine confusion. In her mind, she was still the ultimate victim. "You used to be so sweet, so helpful to your family. Why did you change into this cold, distant person?" "I didn't change, Mom. I just woke up. I saw exactly how you value me. We are family, she whispered, her eyes welling up with strategic tears. Family helps family. No, I corrected her, my voice turning to cold steel. I help times you. You exploit times me. There is a massive, fundamental difference. You looked me in the eye and told me I have no real life. Well, I learned something very important in the Caribbean. My life is very real. My time is exceptionally valuable, and it is no longer yours to command. I reached into my back pocket. I had prepared for this exact moment with Elias. I pulled out a crisp, folded piece of thick, white legal paper. What is this? She asked, her eyes darting to the document. It's a contract, I said, handing it to her. Since you have severe trouble understanding basic boundaries, I had my lawyer draft them in plain English. She unfolded it with trembling hands. Her eyes scanned the page. It read, Consulting and Child Care Agreement. Service Provider. Leo. Last name? Standard rate, $75 per hour. Per child, holiday, weekend rate. $150 per hour. Per child, notice period. A minimum of 14 days written notice is required for all requests. Payment terms, 50% non-refundable deposit required upfront to secure booking. Clause. Any verbal abuse, manipulation, or disparaging comments regarding the provider's life choices, real estate, or career will result in the immediate termination of services and forfeiture of all deposits. You want to charge me money to see my own grandchildren? She looked horrified, as if I had handed her a live grenade. No, I said calmly. If you want to invite me over for a family dinner to be a son and an uncle, I will gladly come for free. I love my nephews and nieces, but if you want me to babysit, if you want me to be a service provider while you go on wine tours, then yes. This is my professional rate. Take it or leave it. If you ever try to dump children on my porch again without a signed contract and a deposit, I will immediately call Child Protective Services for abandonment. I'm not joking. She stared at me. She was desperately searching my face for the crack. She was looking for the guilt, the hesitation, the obedient little boy she used to control with a single look. She didn't find him, he was dead. She saw a grown man who had spent $6,500 to prove a point and who would gladly spend $100,000 more on legal fees to protect his peace. Fine, she whispered, her voice cracking. She folded the contract and shoved it into her expensive purse. Fine. Great, thanks for the ZD. I smiled, a genuine, cold smile. I stepped back and firmly closed the door in her face. I locked the deadbolt. It has been roughly 8 months since the Christmas incident. Things are very different now. We are absolutely not the close, happy family my mother pretends we are on Facebook. But we are honest, or at least I am. Marcus and Chloe still talk to me occasionally, mostly because they need free tech advice or a small loan, but the dynamic has fundamentally shifted. They ask. They say, please. They say thank you, and I say no whenever I want to. They haven't asked me to babysit once, not a single time. Because they know, without a shadow of a doubt, I will send them a formal invoice before I ever open my door. They know they have to figure out their kids' college funds themselves because my bank account is permanently closed to them. My mother is distant. She plays the silent martyr to her remaining friends, telling anyone who will listen that I've become cold, money-obsessed, and corrupted by my massive salary. That is perfectly fine with me. I can live with being the absolute villain in her fictional story as long as I get to be the hero in my actual reality. I am already planning my next Christmas vacation. I am thinking of flying to the Swiss Alps or maybe Tokyo. Somewhere incredibly far, somewhere beautiful, somewhere that is undeniably, beautifully times real. I look back at that exhausted, invisible 1-year-old guy sitting at the plastic kids table 3 years ago eating cold turkey, and I wish I could reach back through time and shake him. I wish I could tell him that he is worth so much more than his utility to other people. I used to be invisible in the family, always compared to my golden sister, even though I was the one carrying everything. I'm not sure this story is real. Maybe it's just a distorted memory, or a version my mind made up to make things easier to accept. Or maybe it's a story that's been told so many times that even I can no longer tell what's true and what's imagined. Either way, this is my story. And I'm going to tell it the way I remember it. Blood is thicker than water? Bullshit. In my experience, blood is just a sticky, messy substance that stains everything it touches. And family. Family is just a group of people who are legally obligated to make you feel like crap. Especially when you're the failure. My name's Nathan, and for as long as I can remember, I've been disappointed. The underachiever. The one who never quite measured up. And my mom? She made damn sure I never forgot it. See, I have a sister, Mary. And Mary was perfect. Golden Child doesn't even begin to cover it. She was the valedictorian, the Ivy League grad, The corporate climber? Everything she touched turned to gold, or at least that's how it appeared. Mom practically worshipped her. Showered her with praise, bragged about her to anyone who would listen, and constantly used her as a yardstick to measure my own worth. And I always came up short. It wasn't like I was a deadbeat or anything. I had a good job in IT. Steady, reliable, paid the bills. I even managed to squirrel away a decent amount of savings. But that wasn't good enough. It wasn't prestigious enough. It wasn't merry enough. And the constant comparisons drove me absolutely insane. Why can't you be more like your sister? Mary would never do that. You should take a page out of Mary's book. I swear, I heard those phrases so many times, I started seeing Mary's face every time I closed my eyes. What really ate at me wasn't just the constant put-downs, it was the blatant hypocrisy. I was the one who was always there, the one who quietly picked up the pieces, the one who actually kept the family afloat. See, Mary's high-flying career might have looked impressive on paper, but it didn't exactly translate into cold, hard cash. She was all about appearances, flaunting her expensive clothes, her fancy car, her swanky condo. But beneath the surface, she was a financial train wreck. And who do you think bailed her out every time? Me. I'd been covering Mom's bills for years. Mortgage payments, unexpected expenses, the never-ending parade of emergencies. I did it out of guilt, out of a misplaced sense of obligation. But did I ever get a thank you? Did I ever get a pat on the back? Hell no. I was just the ATM, the reliable source of funds that could always be counted on. And Mary. She was the star, the one who deserved all the praise, even though she was basically living off my hard work. And then came the day I finally snapped. Mom was at it again, comparing me to Mary, telling me how jealous I was of her success. I'd had enough. Years of resentment, years of feeling invisible, years of being treated like crap finally boiled over. You're just jealous of your sister, she's the successful one, you'll never be like her, she said, her voice dripping with that condescending tone that always made my blood boil. I laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound. Good, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Then she can pay your bills. And just like that, the dam broke. I watched with a perverse sense of satisfaction as my mother's face twisted with anger. But I didn't stop there. I knew I was crossing a line, that I was about to unleash a storm of epic proportions. But I didn't care. I was done. Why don't you call her right now, Mom? I said, pushing my chair back from the table. Ask her to cover the mortgage this month. Since I'm so useless, I guess you won't need my help anymore. My mother's eyes narrowed with suspicion. She knew I was serious. She knew I was about to pull the plug on her comfortable little existence. But her pride wouldn't let her back down. She snatched her phone off the table, her fingers trembling slightly. Fine, she huffed. She actually cares about this family, unlike you. She dialed Mary's number, put the phone on speaker, and waited. I could practically feel the tension in the room, thick and heavy. Mary answered on the third ring, her voice all sweetness and light. Hey Mom, what's up? Honey, my mother said, her voice laced with that cloying, manipulative tone she used to get her way. Nathan has decided he's done helping. I need help covering the mortgage this month. There was a brief pause, a moment of stunned silence. Then, Mary's voice changed. It lost that sugary sweetness, replaced by a sharp, clipped tone that I knew all too well. Mom, I already told you, she said, her voice laced with thinly veiled irritation. I can't right now. I just put a down payment on the new condo. You know how it is? But honey, my mother pleaded, her voice cracking slightly. I don't know what to do. The mortgage is due, and Mom, I can't, Mary said, her voice firm, bordering on dismissive. I just don't have the money. You'll figure it out. And that was it. Just like that, the golden child had crumbled. The facade of perfection had shattered, revealing the hollow shell beneath. My mother's face was a study in disbelief. She stared at the phone, her mouth agape, like she couldn't comprehend what she was hearing. The realization that her precious Mary couldn't, or wouldn't help her was a blow she hadn't seen coming. I decided to twist the knife a little further. Wait a minute, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I thought Mary was the successful one. Shouldn't this be easy for you? What happened to all that big corporate money? Mary's sharp intake of breath was almost audible over the speakerphone. That's none of your business, Nathan, she snapped, all pretense of civility gone. Oh, I think it is, I retorted. Especially since I'm the one who's been bailing you both out for years. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel my mother's eyes boring into me, a mixture of anger and dawning horror on her face. You don't understand. Mary finally said, her voice tight and strained. My expenses are insane. The condo, the car payments, the credit cards, it all adds up. So, the lavish life ain't so lavish after all, huh? I said, leaning back in my chair and relishing the moment. The rest of the conversation was a blur. More excuses from Mary, more pleading from my mother, and more snide remarks from me. Finally, Mary hung up, leaving my mother staring at her phone in stunned silence. Well, I said, standing up and grabbing my jacket. Looks like you bet on the wrong horse, Mom. I turned to leave, but my mother grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. You can't just walk away from this, Nathan, she said, her voice shaking. I need your help. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up at her face. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something genuine in her eyes. Not love, not affection, but fear. I thought Mary was handling it, I said, my voice cold and indifferent. She will, she whispered. She just needs time. It was the same empty promise she'd been making me for years. I raised an eyebrow. And in the meantime? What happens to you? Her hand tightened on my arm, her knuckles white. You're my son, Nathan, she said, her voice pleading. You can't let me lose everything. It was then I saw all the years of manipulation, all the years she forced me to follow her strings. It wasn't going to work. I pried her fingers off my arm. You made your choice, Mom, I said, my voice as hard as stone. Now you get to live with it. And with that, I walked out the door. I didn't look back. As I drove away, I felt a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Relief, anger, sadness, and something else. Something dark and unfamiliar. Was I enjoying this a little too much? Over the next few weeks, I did my best to ignore the chaos that was unfolding back home. My mother bombarded me with calls and texts, ranging from desperate pleas to angry accusations. Mary went radio silent, probably too busy trying to keep her own life from imploding to worry about her mom. But I didn't waver. I knew I was doing the right thing. I had spent too long sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of a family that didn't appreciate me. It was time to put myself first. And then came the call that changed everything. It was Alexis, a family friend. She is one of the few friends my mom kept up with. Nathan, she said, her voice grave. I think you need to know what's happening with your mother. I sighed. What now? Did she finally get evicted? It's worse than that, Nathan, Alexis said. She's desperate. She's been calling everyone, begging for money. She's even been trying to sell off some of the family heirlooms. The news hit me harder than I expected. This was spiraling further than I wanted. So Alexis continued and then said, Mary, that's another story. Alexis, please just get to the point. I replied, my voice tight with growing anxiety. I heard from a little birdie that Mary has loan sharks on her tail. Word of advice? Don't go near the action. You don't want to get involved. Goodbye. The phone call then hung up. The news stopped me in my tracks. I started piecing together all the things Alexis and Mom have been saying over the years. The fact that Mary was so tight on money, and how much she flaunted being high class. I decided to leave things as is. I was going to hide. I tried to brush it off, to tell myself it wasn't my problem. But I couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control. I kept thinking about my mother, alone and desperate, and Mary who had done things that were wrong. She has put herself in great danger. My heart grew heavier, and there was nothing I could do. I decided to protect myself. I started diverting large sums of money into offshore accounts, making sure that no one, especially Mary, would be able to find them. Since they were out to use me as an ATM, I wasn't going to be used. That way I was free to do whatever I wanted. The guilt at the selfishness barely pricked my conscience. It was survival. A week later, I received a call from Alexis, again concerned. I picked it up immediately this time. Nathan, I hate to be the one to call, but it's important. My stomach dropped. Please tell me Mom isn't going to do something stupid, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It's about Mary. No one can get a hold of her. She missed dinner with her co-workers who called to check on her since she hasn't been seen at work in the past week. I paused. In the past week, I've seen no calls or texts. It's odd, I thought, but at the same time, it wasn't. I was one of the few people Mom and Mary contacted. What did I know? Is this about loan sharks? I responded, dread creeping into my voice. I don't know, but this seems to spell disaster, Alexis stated, her voice shaking. All right, I'll head to her condo and check things out, I replied, hesitant to get involved. Each step closer felt like stepping into quicksand, knowing it could drag me under too. Part of me screamed at me to stay away, that I had done enough. But the other part, the part that still clung to some twisted sense of family, wouldn't let me turn away. As I drove to Mary's condo, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The sky had turned gray, and the wind was picking up, as if foreshadowing what was to come. I thought about turning around, to stay away, but I was so close, and part of me needed to know what had happened. The guilt weighed heavily on me. I pulled into the parking lot of Mary's condo, and walked up to the door. As I went to knock on the door, it swung open, revealing a scene that would forever be etched in my nightmares. The air was thick with a strong, metallic scent. The living room furniture had been flipped and shattered. Broken pieces of porcelain were spread across the floor. I followed the red stains across the room and toward the bedroom. As I got to the door, I peeked in and immediately ran to a trash can to puke. What I saw is something I will never forget. Mary was spread across the bed with slashes all across her chest. Her condo had been completely ransacked and robbed. I was the first to the scene. She lay like a discarded doll, her perfect image shattered, her life brutally extinguished. I bolted out of the condo, gasping for air. I stumbled to a nearby trash can and emptied my stomach, the bile burning my throat. When I could finally stand, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the device. The authorities swarmed the scene. The police, the paramedics, the crime scene investigators, a cacophony of sirens and flashing lights that only amplified the horror of what I had just witnessed. I was questioned for hours, grilled about my relationship with Mary, my knowledge of her debts, her associations. It became clear that I was one of the last people Mary had contacted. The detectives saw me as a suspect. Finally, exhausted and traumatized, I was released. They warned me not to leave town, that I was still a person of interest. I didn't care. I just wanted to go home, to scrub the images from my mind, to forget everything that had happened. But I knew that was impossible. I was forever tainted. As I headed back to my car, a chilling realization began to creep into my mind. This wasn't just about the money. It was about something more. Something darker. Something that reached back into our twisted family history, our poisonous dynamic. Had my refusal to help set this chain of events in motion? Was I responsible for Mary's death? It was 3 a.m. when I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, but the same sense of dread that had plagued me all day compelled me to pick up. The voice on the other end was distorted, almost robotic. It sent shivers down my spine. "Thank you for doing what you did. You have set your mom free. I hope you live a long life." Then the call immediately ended. My blood ran cold. Those words? They sounded like a threat. A promise. A confession. I checked my bank account, and saw that all of my savings and wealth had been transferred to an offshore account. An account of my own. What is going on? What have I done? The dread was creeping in. Was I next? I received a call in the morning to attend Mary's funeral, and I attended with a heavy heart. The call happened to be from Mom. I picked my mom up, and she's a husk of what she once was. There was no emotion. No feeling. We sat in the pews without expression. The words and prayers of the speakers did nothing to ease the atmosphere. I was getting stares and glares from all members of the family. I wasn't the golden child, and never will be. We drove home in silence, and it was a silence that I was going to have to carry with me for the rest of my life. As the days turned into weeks, I felt so empty. Although my life was financially stable and free from my family, I have no one to turn to. I have blood on my hands, whether direct or not. I receive a call from the police, and they say that they are closing the case for Mary, as they suspect it to be someone out of state. They give me their condolences and then hang up. I can never tell Mom about that. She's too fragile, and it may kill her. A year has passed, I received a call, and it's from an unknown number. I picked up, and I heard my mom tell me these words. "You're free. Finally, both of us are free." It was the only choice for me to take. "Please don't find me." I tried to respond with the words, "What do you mean?" But the call immediately ended. I tried calling again, but the line went dead. It was then I realized that those are the words of someone who was on the brink. Of someone who had nothing left. The finality of these words was all but telling. I contacted Alexis about my mom, and we searched all day and all night looking for her. We posted photos. We called the authorities. And nothing. 3 days later, I received a call from the local police. A body has been found in the reservoir. I had to go to identify the body, and it was my mother. She was gone. She had weighed herself and jumped in the reservoir. I'm left with nothing. I didn't want this. I wanted to be free of them, but not for them to perish. I wanted to escape, not destroy. I sold everything and decided to move. I leave this place behind with the horrifying memories that have occurred. The offshore account? I left it untouched. It was tainted money, blood money, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I gave the details to Alexis. She could donate it, burn it, do whatever she wanted with it. I just wanted it gone. My childhood crush rejected me for my sister, who turned him down. When we started dating, she returned and confessed her feelings. Honestly, I never thought Victor would love me. From childhood, I lived in the shadow of my older sister, Amal. She was beautiful, intelligent, and outgoing, loved by everyone. And me? Just a shy, quiet, and somewhat unremarkable kid. Every time our families gathered, I would only dare to look at Victor from afar. He was always by Amal's side, his eyes full of love. Everyone knew Victor liked my sister, and so did I. I'll always remember the day Victor confessed his love to Amal for the first time when they were both 15. I hid in my room, my heart pounding, both excited and afraid. I knew she would reject him, because she always saw Victor as a close friend. But I still couldn't stop myself from hoping that maybe, just maybe, she would give him a chance. And then, as I predicted, she rejected him. I heard Victor's disappointment, but he still tried to appear strong. She hugged him, saying she didn't want to lose their beautiful friendship. I knew, at that moment, my heart shattered into a million pieces. In the years that followed, I always tried to avoid Victor. Every time I saw him, I felt a sharp pain in my heart. I knew I didn't have a chance, and I didn't want to be a third wheel ruining their friendship. I just quietly watched him from afar, silently wishing him happiness. When we were 18, Victor confessed his love to Amal again. This time, I was prepared for it. I knew she would reject him, because she wanted freedom. She wanted to explore the world. She said she wanted to go to college in Los Angeles, where she could experience everything without worrying about relationships. I was shocked when I heard her say that. I didn't expect her to have such bold thoughts. I knew she wanted to live a full life, without regrets. But I also knew that meant Victor would have to endure another heartbreak. I'll always remember the night before Amal left for Los Angeles. Both families gathered to see her off. Victor sat quietly in a corner, his eyes sad. I knew he was hurting, but he didn't say anything. I wanted to go to him, comfort him, but I didn't have the courage. After Amal left, Victor became quieter. He spoke less, smiled less, and always seemed a little melancholy. I knew he was trying to get over the pain, but I didn't know how to help him. A year later, I decided to apply to the university in Pasadena, where Victor was studying. I didn't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to be near him, even if just as a friend. Or maybe I wanted to prove to him that I could also be successful, that I was worthy of his love. On my first day at school, I was surprised to see Victor. He had changed a lot. He had become stronger, more confident, and more attractive. I felt my heart beat faster when I saw him. He was also very surprised to see me. He asked me why I was here, and I just shrugged. I didn't dare tell him the truth, that I had always loved him, and I wanted to be with him. He invited me to take a tour of the campus, and I agreed immediately. We had a wonderful afternoon together. We talked, laughed, and shared our thoughts. I felt like I had known him for a long time. After that day, we started hanging out together more often. We studied together, exercised together, and explored new things together. I felt myself falling in love with him. I realized that Victor was not just a friend, but also a teacher, a companion, and a soulmate. He was always there for me, encouraging me, and helping me overcome the difficulties in my life. He was the only one who understood me, and I understood him too. 2 years later, we decided to start dating. I was very happy when he told me he loved me. I knew that he had once loved Amal, and maybe he still had feelings for her. But I believed that, over time, he would love me wholeheartedly. I always tried to be a good girlfriend, always supporting him, and always being there for him. I wanted to show him that I was worthy of his love. After graduation, Victor decided to stay in Pasadena to work. I also applied to work for the same company, but in a different department. We wanted to have a stable life, and we wanted to build a happy family. 2 years passed, and our life was very peaceful and happy. We loved each other, respected each other, and always supported each other in everything. I felt like I was the luckiest woman in the world. One beautiful day, Victor told me that he wanted to propose to me. I was very touched when I heard him say that. I knew that he had thought very carefully before making this decision. I also knew that he loved me wholeheartedly. Victor wanted to propose to me in front of both of our families. He had prepared a romantic evening, with flowers, candles, and music. I was very excited waiting for this important moment. But then, everything didn't go as I expected. That day, Victor told me that he had to go home to his parents' house for urgent business. He told me to stay home, and come with him on Saturday. I was a little suspicious, but still agreed. When I arrived at his house, I saw Amal there. I was very surprised to see her. I didn't expect her to return to the country at this time. Dinner that night was very normal. Everyone talked, laughed, and ate. But I felt an underlying tension between Victor and Amal. And then, at the moment Victor wanted to announce his proposal, Amal interrupted. She said she wanted to say something important. She said that she loved Victor, and she wanted to be his girlfriend. I was shocked when I heard her say that. I didn't expect her to do that. I knew that she had rejected Victor before, and I believed that she no longer loved him. Everyone in the family was very surprised. My mom and Amal's mom clapped and congratulated them, but I knew that Victor was not happy. Victor tried to explain to Amal, but she refused to listen. She said that everyone knew that Victor loved her, and she was just giving him a chance. Victor was very angry. He said that he would never want to date someone like her. He said that he would never be with someone who had been with many other men. Amal was very hurt when she heard Victor say that. She ran out of the house, crying. My mom and Amal's mom scolded Victor, saying that he was too cruel to her. Victor tried to explain to everyone, but no one would listen to him. My mom said that he was only with me to get revenge on Amal. My dad also said that he had never told them about our relationship, and they didn't believe that he loved me wholeheartedly. I was very hurt when I heard those words. I knew that my family didn't accept our relationship. I also knew that Amal would never let Victor go. I cried a lot that night. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should continue this relationship or not. The next morning, Victor came to find me. He said that he wanted to propose to me immediately. He said that he loved me, and he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. I was very touched when I heard him say that. I knew that he was trying to prove to his family that he loved me wholeheartedly. I also knew that he was trying to protect me from Amal. I accepted his proposal. I knew that our life wouldn't be easy, but I believed that we could overcome any difficulties if we loved each other wholeheartedly. We went to see my parents to talk. But things got worse. My dad and Victor argued, and eventually they fought. The police came and arrested both of them. I was very scared when I saw Victor being arrested. I knew that he was innocent, but I couldn't do anything to help him. After Victor was released, we went to his parents' house to talk. But Amal was there. She attacked me, because she didn't want me to marry Victor. Her mother also kicked me out of the house. I was very hurt when I was rejected by both families. I felt like I was being turned against by the whole world. But Victor was always there for me. He hugged me, comforted me, and said that he would never leave me. He said that he loved me, and he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. I decided to leave Pasadena and start a new life somewhere else. I wanted to get away from both families, and I wanted to have a space of my own to build my happiness. Victor agreed with my decision. He said that he would follow me anywhere. He said that he loved me, and he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. We got married in a small ceremony, only close friends attended. We promised each other that we would love each other, respect each other, and always support each other in everything. After we got married, we moved to a small town in Northern California. We found good jobs, and we bought a small house. We lived a peaceful and happy life. A year later, I got pregnant. We were very happy when we heard this news. We knew that we would be good parents. When I was a few months pregnant, Victor received a call from his dad. He said that Amal had been discovered to have been lying about everything. She had faked messages, pretended to go to college, and caused many other problems. I was very shocked when I heard this news. I didn't expect Amal to do that. I knew that she had always been jealous of me, but I didn't expect her to be able to hurt me like that. Victor's dad also said that Amal had been expelled from school, banned from flying, and was having many difficulties in her life. I felt sorry for her, but I also felt lucky that I had escaped from her. After hearing this news, I decided to forgive Amal. I knew that she had done many wrong things, but I believed that she had regretted them. I also believed that she deserved a second chance. I called Amal and told her that I forgave her. I also said that I hoped she could find happiness in her life. Amal was very touched when she heard me say that. She cried and apologized to me. She said that she had been wrong to try to destroy my happiness. I told her that it was okay, and I hoped she could forget the past and start a new life. After that call, I felt much lighter. I knew that I had done the right thing. I also knew that I would never regret my decision. And then, the day my child was born came. It was a beautiful, healthy baby girl. Victor and I named her Lily. Since having a child, my life has become more meaningful than ever. I love my child, and I will do everything to protect her. Victor and I still live happily together. We love each other, respect each other, and always support each other in everything. We have overcome many difficulties, and we have proven to everyone that our love is genuine. I know that our life won't always be easy, but I believe that we can overcome any challenges if we love each other wholeheartedly. I am Haley, and I am the happiest woman in the world. I have a wonderful husband, a beautiful daughter, and a peaceful life. I don't need anything else. And whether my parents come to the wedding or not, it doesn't matter anymore. I have Victor and my baby girl by my side. That's all I need. I supported my family financially, and after discovering I was pregnant on vacation, I decided to keep the baby despite my family's opposition. Let's be real, on paper, my life looked Instagram perfect. At 32, I was killing it as a senior product manager at a fintech startup here in Boston. Years of hustle had paid off, and last year, that glorious six-figure salary finally materialized. The condo downtown? Floor-to-ceiling windows, amazing views. My BMW? Nothing crazy, just enough to make me grin when I hit the gas. But behind the carefully curated facade, things were complicated. It all boiled down to one word: family. More specifically, my financial responsibility for my family. My parents, sweetest people in the world, but terrible with money. Dad's chronic back issues had sidelined him, and the mortgage payments were crushing them. Mom, bless her heart, had this way of making you feel utterly guilty if you didn't help. After all we sacrificed to put you through college, Lauren. So, yeah, I took over the mortgage, the utilities, the whole shebang. Then there was Megan, my younger sister. Freelance graphic designer, bursting with talent but perpetually broke. The cost of living in this city is insane, and her gigs were, well, sporadic. When she and her fiancé, Jake, found their dream apartment last year, guess who stepped in to cover the rent? It was manageable, thanks to my salary, but those monthly expenses definitely put a dent in my designer handbag fund. Our family dynamic? Rock solid. Every other Sunday, we'd gather at my parents' place. Mom's lasagna was legendary, Dad would share the latest neighborhood gossip, and Megan would showcase her newest design projects. It was predictable, comforting, almost ritualistic. And then I went to Costa Rica. It was supposed to be a no-brainer vacation. I'd been burning the candle at both ends with a massive platform launch. My boss, David, practically shoved me out the door. I booked a beachfront resort, picturing myself lost in novels and sipping fruity cocktails. Zero ambition required. That's where I met him. Mike. Mid-30s, ruggedly handsome. He was staying at the same resort, also traveling solo. The cliché happened. We met at the hotel bar. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, gesturing to the empty stool beside me. Dark hair, a hint of gray at the temples, laugh lines etched around his eyes. Not movie star gorgeous, but with this warm, inviting charm. One drink led to three. We talked about everything: our jobs, he was an architect from Seattle, our favorite books, our travel adventures. By the end of the night, we were strolling along the beach, stars overhead. We spent the next 2 weeks exploring the rainforest, snorkeling in turquoise waters, and, yes, sharing a hotel room. It was intense, exhilarating, but not love. We were two adults enjoying each other's company, fully aware that it had an expiration date. We said goodbye with a kiss, promised nothing, and went our separate ways. I didn't even get his last name. Seemed like a lifetime ago now. Back in Boston, I threw myself back into work, trying to bury those 2 weeks under a mountain of spreadsheets and deadlines. Then, 3 weeks after my return, the morning sickness hit. At first, I brushed it off as stress. Then, my period was MIA. The explanation, chillingly obvious, slapped me in the face. A pregnancy test, bought in a frantic rush after work. My hands were trembling as I waited in my bathroom. 2 pink lines. Repeat the next morning. Same result. Pregnant. At 32. From a vacation fling with a man I barely knew. This wasn't my plan. This wasn't how my story was supposed to go. For days, I functioned on autopilot, a zombie at work. My brain was a battlefield of options. Termination was the practical choice, the responsible choice. I could try to find Mike, but how? Was I really going to track down a one-night stand and turn him into a father? Then there was the terrifying alternative. I could do this alone. But strangely, as the initial shock wore off, a warmth began to spread through me. Maybe, just maybe, This wasn't a disaster. I had a good job, financial security, a great apartment. I could provide for a child. And while motherhood hadn't exactly been on my 5-year plan, I realized I didn't want to give up this chance. By the time Sunday dinner rolled around, my decision was made. I was keeping the baby. Now, I just had to tell my family. The drive to my parents' place was an exercise in mental gymnastics. I rehearsed my speech. I'm 32, financially stable, and perfectly capable of raising a child on my own. This is my choice. But my stomach was churning as I pulled into their driveway. Mom greeted me with a hug. "You're late," she scolded, ever the matriarch. "Dinner's almost ready." We settled around the table, the usual routine of passing dishes and making small talk. I barely touched my lasagna, waiting for the right moment. Dessert arrived, and I took a deep breath. "I have something to tell you all," I announced, my voice steadier than I felt. 3 pairs of eyes locked on me. "I'm pregnant. About 7 weeks along." The silence was deafening. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Dad froze, his coffee cup suspended halfway to his mouth. Megan's eyes widened. "But, who's the father?" I explained about Mike, the vacation fling, the lack of contact information. "So some random guy knocked you up and disappeared?" Megan's tone was sharp. "He didn't disappear," I corrected. "We both agreed it was just a vacation thing." "Lauren," Mom said slowly. "Have you considered your options?" I knew what she meant. "I've thought about it a lot," I replied. "I'm keeping the baby." Dad, who had been silent until now, shook his head. "Lauren, think about what you're saying. You're 32, single, with a demanding career. This isn't the time to have a child. Especially not one from this situation." "Your father's right," Mom chimed in. "You should get rid of it before it complicates your life." I stared at them, stunned. I'd expected questions, concerns, maybe even disappointment. But this? This immediate push for termination? "What about the father's medical history?" Megan asked. "You don't know anything about him. What if the baby has problems? What if there's something genetically wrong?" "The baby," I said, emphasizing each word, "is going to be fine." "You can't know that," Mom argued. "Lauren, be sensible," Dad added. "This isn't how you planned your life." I stood up, pushing my chair back. "I've made my decision. I'm having this baby. With or without your support." I fled, tears blurring my vision. "They'll call," I told myself as I drove home. "They'll calm down. They'll come around once they've had time to process the news." The next morning my phone rang. It was Mom. "Lauren, honey." Her voice was contrite. "I'm sorry about last night. We were just shocked. You told me to abort my baby. We were concerned, that's all. But you're right, it's your decision. Let's forget about what happened and move forward." I hesitated, then sighed. "Okay, Mom. Good. So, we'll see you at Sunday dinner next week?" "Yeah," I said. "I'll be there." But as I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in our relationship. And, as I would soon discover, I was right. The following weeks were brutal. Morning sickness was no joke. It wasn't just in the morning, I was nauseous all day, barely able to keep anything down. After 2 weeks of struggling at work, my boss, David, called me into his office. "Lauren, I'm concerned," David said, leaning forward in his chair. "You're not yourself lately. Your team has noticed too." I hadn't planned to tell anyone at work yet, but the genuine concern in his eyes broke my resolve. I explained my situation. "I see," he said, nodding slowly. "Well, congratulations are in order then. You need to take care of yourself. Why don't you take some time off?" "I can't," I protested. "I have projects to manage, clients depending on me." "The projects will be here when you get back. Take a few weeks of sick leave if you need to, but get some rest." Eventually, I agreed. With my savings, I could afford a few weeks without the additional bonuses and overtime pay. But as I was calculating my leave, a sobering thought hit me. My family's financial needs wouldn't take a break just because I was pregnant. Mom and Megan visited regularly during my leave. They'd bring groceries or homemade soup, but there was always an undercurrent to their concern. "Still feeling so sick?" Mom would say, fluffing my pillows. "If only you'd listened to us, you wouldn't be suffering like this. It'll all be worth it when it's over." Megan was more direct. "I don't know how you're going to manage alone. Babies are expensive and demanding. And what about all your other responsibilities?" I knew exactly what she meant by other responsibilities. One afternoon, as Mom was fixing tea in my kitchen, She hesitantly brought up finances. "Lauren, your father and I were wondering about the mortgage payment for next month." "Don't worry," I assured her. "I've set up automatic transfers. I can still help with the bills." Her relief was palpable. "Oh, thank goodness." She hugged me tightly. "You're such a good daughter." As she left that day, I couldn't help wondering if her concern was genuinely for me, or for the financial support I provided. But I pushed the thought away. They were family, of course they cared about me. My pregnancy dragged on through seasons of discomfort. The morning sickness eventually subsided, only to be replaced by backaches, swollen feet, and a constant feeling of exhaustion. But with each ultrasound, each tiny kick, I grew more certain I'd made the right decision. "It's a boy," the technician told me during my 20-week scan. "You're having a son." I'd asked Megan to come with me that day, hoping to build some enthusiasm in at least one family member. She sat beside me, watching the screen with an unreadable expression. "Isn't it amazing?" I asked, pointing to the perfect outline of his profile. She replied, then quickly changed the subject. "So, have you talked to HR about your maternity leave? How long will you be away from work?" The question beneath her question was clear. How long will your income be reduced? "I'll take the standard 12 weeks, but I can work remotely for part of it," I said, adjusting my shirt over my growing belly. "Don't worry, I'll still be able to help with your rent." She had the decency to look embarrassed. "That's not what I meant." But we both knew it was. As my due date approached, I transformed the second bedroom of my condo into a nursery. Soft blue walls, a white crib, a rocking chair by the window overlooking the city. I'd sit there sometimes, rubbing my belly and talking to my son about the life we'd have together. "It'll be just you and me, buddy," I'd say. "But we'll be okay." My family's visits became shorter and more perfunctory. Mom would drop by with prenatal vitamins or pregnancy magazines, but she never stayed long. Dad barely came at all, citing his back pain as an excuse. Megan was busy with her design work and wedding planning, though she found time to send me links to articles about single motherhood statistics and the challenges of raising a child alone. The stark contrast between my family's behavior and my coworkers' reactions was hard to ignore. My team organized a surprise baby shower, complete with thoughtful gifts and genuine excitement for my impending motherhood. David assured me my position would be waiting for me after maternity leave and even suggested flexible working arrangements once I returned. "We value you, Lauren," he said. "We'll make it work." Why couldn't my family show the same support? The answer came in an unexpected way, through a simple technological mistake. But that's a story for the next chapter. What happened still breaks my heart when I think about it, even now, years later. It changed everything. It forced my hand. It showed me who my real family was. And it made me realize that sometimes, the blood you're born into isn't always the most important thing. After my husband died, I raised my son alone. But then my mother excluded him from Christmas and treated my support like a monthly duty. I woke up as the clock struck 7 a.m. Sitting up on the single bed, I tried to shake off the lingering fatigue. Beside me, Leo, my 7-year-old son, was still sound asleep, his messy blonde hair spread across the pillow. Looking at him, my heart tightened. It's been almost a year since David, my husband and Leo's father, died in a construction accident. Since then, our lives have completely changed. I became a widow at 34, something I never imagined would happen. I work as the head of marketing for a small company, just enough to support the two of us. But the hardest part isn't the job or the finances. It's the loneliness and the burden of raising a child on my own. Fortunately, I have Alice and George, my in-laws. They're wonderful people, always willing to help whenever I need it. Alice often picks Leo up after school so I can focus on work. Every time I go to pick him up, she tries to slip money into my pocket, but I always refuse. "Clara, we just want to help," Alice once said, her eyes sincere. "We know the insurance payout was generous, but please, let us help." I appreciate their kindness deeply. The compensation, combined with my income, allows us to live fairly comfortably. But what I understand most clearly is that their help isn't just financial, it's filled with love and genuine care. If only my own parents treated Leo and me the same way. Ever since I was little, I've always felt like the stepchild in my own family. My parents always favored my sister, Brenda, and now they treat her children the same way. Last week, Leo went to visit his maternal grandparents, and everything unfolded as usual. He was excited, but after only 20 minutes, my mother started complaining. "Why does the clock sound so strange?" Leo asked, pointing to the old grandfather clock in the living room. "How does it work?" My mother sighed and rolled her eyes. "Clara, can't you tell him to be quiet? He just keeps asking question after question. Brenda's kids never bother anyone like this. My father nodded in agreement and opened his laptop. Leo, go play a game, son. I downloaded some fun ones for you. But Leo doesn't like playing games. He likes to talk, to learn about everything around him. Meanwhile, Brenda's 3 children sat silently in the corner, glued to their phones. To my parents, that's the definition of good behavior. I've gotten used to staying silent in the face of comparisons and criticisms. Since I was young, I learned to suppress my emotions, accepting that I wasn't the favorite child. Every time my parents praised Brenda and criticized me, I'd just shake my head and stay quiet. At least they still help me occasionally, watching Leo when I work late, or picking him up if Alice is busy. One Tuesday evening, I went to my parents' house for dinner. The moment I walked in, I knew something was off. My mother had made lasagna, my favorite dish, which she only ever cooks when she's about to ask for something. My father was unusually talkative, asking about work, Leo, and a dozen other things. I knew they were building up to something, but I couldn't guess what. Clara, my mother said, carefully slicing her lasagna. We've been meaning to ask you. How much did the insurance pay out after David passed? It felt like a slap. I almost choked on my drink. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe I was just too tired of keeping secrets from them, but I told the truth. Around $300,000. My mother's fork clattered onto her plate. My father snapped his head up so fast I feared he might hurt his neck. They stared at me like I'd just won the lottery. Is that so? My mother said slowly. And what are you planning to do with that money? I felt the weight settle on my shoulders. I've already invested it, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That money is for Leo's future, for college, or maybe a home someday. David and I had planned that together. But that's years from now, my father interjected. You should think about the present. Think about the family. And I knew. The family he spoke of didn't include Leo. You could do a lot with that money, my mother added, leaning in eagerly. Help the family, those who need it now, instead of holding on to it for a future that might never come. I don't want to talk about money anymore, I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. Silence fell over the room. My father's face was filled with disappointment, an expression I knew all too well. My mother pressed her lips together, a clear sign she was angry. Dinner continued in heavy silence, broken only by the clinking of cutlery against plates. I thought that was the end of it. I knew my parents would be upset with me for at least a month, as they always were whenever I didn't do what they wanted. But to my surprise, just a week later, my mother called. This Sunday the whole family having dinner together, she said in a voice sweet as honey. Brenda and the kids will be there too. You have to come, sweetheart. I felt uneasy but agreed anyway. That Sunday, I arrived at my parents' house with a strange feeling in my chest. Brenda had come early with her 3 kids, all of them glued to their phones as usual. When everyone sat down at the table, Brenda started complaining about rising prices, increasing bills, and how hard life was getting. Everything's just so expensive, she sighed, passing around the mashed potatoes. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, lamenting food prices and the electricity bill. Then Brenda cleared her throat and straightened her back. I've been thinking, she announced, scanning the table with the confident gaze she's had since we were kids. Clara and I should help Mom and Dad financially. I'll send $500 a month. I wish I could give more, but Ben's the only one working, and I still have to raise the kids. She paused, as if building suspense, then turned to me with a fake smile. And you, Clara, you should send Mom and Dad $1,000 a month. I nearly choked again. What? It makes sense, Brenda continued, her voice calm like she was just presenting a simple equation. You earn more and only have 1 child. And, well, your situation is a bit more comfortable now. I felt my blood boil. The situation she referred to was David's death, the insurance money I'd set aside for my son's future. I wanted to scream, I'm a widow. I don't have a partner to share the financial burden anymore. But my mother clapped her hands with joy, and my father beamed like he'd just received a Christmas present. Oh, my sweet daughters, my mom exclaimed. You don't know how much this means to us. I sat there, furious, in disbelief. My whole life, I had tried to be recognized, to be accepted, and now, they were putting a price on love. All right, I heard myself say. I'll do it. That first transfer hurt the most. $1,000 vanished from my account with just a few clicks. I told myself, if this buys support from my family, maybe it's worth it. But that illusion faded quickly. Mom, can you pick up Leo today? Alice has a doctor's appointment and I've got a late meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetheart, my mom said over the phone. I've got a headache, you know how my migraines are. It was always something. Every time I needed help, my mother had a reason to say no. Tired, busy, going grocery shopping, back pain. And still, the $1,000 kept leaving my account every month. One Thursday afternoon, when my mother once again refused to watch Leo, this time because she might be getting sick, I called Alice, nearly in desperation. Of course we'll pick him up, Alice said without hesitation. George is already on his way to school. Leo's telling him all about his science project. I hung up and collapsed into a chair, trying to hold back the tears welling in my eyes. $1,000 a month bought me nothing but excuses, while my mother-in-law would drop everything to help me, and never ask for anything. December was approaching. My family always celebrated Christmas at my parents' house. It was tradition, the whole family gathered, exchanging gifts, eating together, making memories. A week before Christmas, my mother called. "Sweet Clara," she began, her voice sugary sweet. "About Christmas Eve. Your father and I want to host an adults-only party this year. No kids this time." I gripped the pen in my hand. It snapped in two. "What?" "We just want to do something a little more elegant this year," she said breezily, as if discussing a change in dessert. "Wine, adult conversations, you understand?" "But, it's Christmas," I protested, stepping away so Leo wouldn't hear. "Where am I supposed to leave Leo?" "Oh, that's simple," my mother said as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Just drop him off at Alice and George's. They'll be happy to watch him. You only need to be here at 7. I hung up the phone and looked over at Leo, still focused on his math homework, tongue sticking out in concentration, just like David used to do. For the next week, I wrestled with myself. Would skipping Christmas with my family be too dramatic? But celebrating it without my son felt too painful. In the end, I chose a compromise. I'd leave Leo with Alice and George for a few hours, drop by my parents' house to give gifts and say hello, then head back to spend the real holiday with my in-laws and my son. On Christmas Eve, I drove alone to my parents' house, a carefully wrapped gift bag in my hands. The street was packed with cars. Outside, I could already hear laughter and Christmas music. I opened the door, and the world tilted. The house was full of relatives, but what stunned me were the kids running around the living room, wearing paper hats and shrieking with joy. I saw Emily, my cousin's daughter, grabbing cookies near the tree. The more I looked, the clearer it became. Kids were everywhere. Michael's children, Susan's grandchildren. And only one child had been left out. Leo. I stood frozen in the doorway, my heart pounding. Aunt Helen was the first to spot me. "Clara, darling." She rushed over to hug me and looked around. "Where's Leo? Don't tell me he's sick." Before I could answer, Michael chimed in. "Yeah." Jake was excited to show Leo his new chemistry set. Questions began pouring in from all sides. I couldn't speak. Through the crowd, I saw my mother arranging cookies on a tray, as if everything was completely normal. As if she hadn't excluded Leo from Christmas. "I'm sorry," I whispered, weaving through the guests. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Privately." I pulled her into the hallway, away from the curious stares of our relatives. My heart was still pounding, and my fingers were clenched so tight my nails dug into my skin. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You told me this was an adults-only party. You specifically told me not to bring Leo. So why is Brenda's kid here? And all the other kids? What kind of no-kids party is this?" My mom adjusted her Christmas sweater and avoided eye contact. "Well, this is a different situation." "How so?" "Those kids know how to behave at a formal gathering," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the living room. "They're more polite." I stared at her, stunned. "More polite? Leo is one of the most well-behaved kids I know. His teachers always praise him. Alice and George, too." "Oh please, not Alice and George again," my mother cut in, rolling her eyes. "They spoil him. Let him ask a million questions non-stop. The other kids know their place. They understand boundaries." Right at that moment, a scream erupted from the dining room. Ethan, Brenda's youngest, had just thrown a handful of deviled eggs straight at his sister. The eggs flew across the table and splattered all over Emily's new dress. She screamed. I turned back to my mother, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, I can really see how well-behaved the kids are." My mother's face darkened. "Kids are supposed to be a little wild. But Leo asks too many questions. It's like he's trying to lecture the adults. Don't make this into a big deal, Clara. It's just a small difference, that's all." I felt something inside me break. Something that had been hurt for far too long, and could no longer endure. "I'm leaving," I said, turning away. "I'm going home to Leo." My mother shrugged, her eyes fixed on her bright red nails. "Suit yourself. But don't forget to leave the gift bag under the tree, we'll open them after dinner." I stopped, looked at her one last time, then walked back into the living room. I cleared my throat loudly. The chatter faded. All eyes turned to me. "Some of you have asked why I came alone tonight," I began, my voice louder than I expected. "Why Leo isn't here for the family's Christmas party." Brenda stepped toward me, maybe to stop me, but I held up a hand. "Let me finish. I came alone because a week ago, my mother called and told me this was an adults-only party. She told me I couldn't bring Leo." Murmurs rippled through the room. Helen's jaw dropped. "What? But there are kids everywhere?" "We weren't told anything about kids not being allowed," Uncle Paul added, staring at my mother in disbelief. My mother awkwardly stepped forward. "Clara, now's not the time." "No, Mom," I said, eyes locked on hers. "Now is exactly the time. Because this isn't an adults-only party. It's a party that excludes one child, my child." The murmuring grew louder. I saw the stunned looks, the disappointed headshakes aimed at my parents. "But that's not even the worst part," I said with a quiet, humorless laugh. "While my son was being left out of Christmas, I was expected to send my parents $1,000 a month. Brenda? She was supposed to send $500. Ben, Brenda's husband, looked up like he'd been shocked with electricity. "Wait. $500? Brenda's face went pale. Ben turned to her confused. "Where would you be sending $500 from? We barely manage rent every month." Brenda stammered, her face flushing red. I never actually sent anything." I looked at her, no longer feeling even a shred of pity. "They asked Brenda to lie. Told her to say she was contributing, so I'd feel like I had to do my part too. They said if I believed she was paying, I'd agree." Silence. Utter silence. I watched as the truth sank into everyone's faces. The scattered pieces came together into a full picture, one where my parents had deceived me, used me like an ATM, while excluding my child. Aunt Susan spoke, her voice trembling with rage. "You used your own daughter for money, then cast out your grandson from the family? That's unthinkable, disgraceful." The room erupted. Voices raised, demanding answers, calling out my parents. Ben turned on Brenda, furious, questioning her. My parents stood frozen, their perfect family facade collapsing before them. I raised my hand again, everyone fell silent. "There's one more thing I want to say." All eyes turned to me again. My parents stood by the Christmas tree, pale as ghosts. Brenda was still trying to explain herself to Ben. "From this moment on," I said, my voice calm, like passing a sentence, "I won't be sending another dollar to either of you. And I will no longer maintain any relationship with you, or with Brenda. I'm done." I turned, placed the gift bag by the door, and walked out of the house I once called home. The door closed behind me with a final thud, the period to a chapter I should have ended long ago. I sat in the car for a long while, hands resting on the steering wheel, heart still trembling. The night air was freezing, but inside me was a strange warmth, a feeling I hadn't had in years. Relief. I unlocked my phone and opened the banking app. With just a few simple steps, I canceled the monthly transfer to my mother's account. One tap, one confirmation, as if I had just broken the invisible chain that had been dragging me for the past year. The road back to Alice and George's felt both long and incredibly short. As I pulled into their driveway, I saw Leo through the kitchen window, standing by the counter helping Alice decorate cookies. Warm yellow light glowed on his tousled blonde hair. He was smiling. A full, carefree smile. My eyes stung. That evening, we stayed with Alice and George. We baked cookies, sang a few silly carols, then rearranged the nativity scene that Leo had put in the wrong order. George explained each figure in the Christmas story, and Leo asked question after question. And no one, not a single person, told him he was being a bother. That's when I realized, this is what family is. Not blood. But the people who choose you. Who chooses your child? The next morning, while Leo was still fast asleep among a pile of Santa's presents, my phone rang. It was Aunt Susan. "You should hear what happened after you left," she said, skipping any pleasantries. "As soon as you walked out, it was like a dam broke. Uncle Robert stood up and said he couldn't stay another minute. Then Helen left. Then Paul. People started walking out one after another. Some even told your parents to their faces that they were con artists. That they were a disgrace to the family." I listened in silence. Aunt Susan continued, her voice angry on my behalf. Ben was furious. He packed up the kids' things right then and told Brenda he needed time to think about their marriage. Last night, he took them to his parents' house. I closed my eyes. A part of me felt sad for what Brenda had caused, but mostly, I just felt, right. All of this should have come out a long time ago. I want you to know, Aunt Susan added, her voice softening. We're on your side. What they did to you and Leo, it's unforgivable. I thanked her, then hung up. Right after, the messages came flooding in, from my mother, my father, and Brenda. All saying the same thing. We're sorry, we were wrong, please talk to us, let us explain. I read each one. Then quietly moved them to the archive. I didn't reply. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed like a gentle breeze. Leo and I stayed with Alice and George, playing board games, watching movies, baking. Nothing extravagant, nothing loud, just pure, genuine warmth. The new year has arrived. On the morning of the 31st, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents standing on the porch, holding a large gift box wrapped in shiny paper. My heart thudded, not from fear, but because I wasn't sure whether I should even open the door. Clara, we know you're home, my mother's voice called sweetly from outside. So sweet it made my skin crawl. We just want to talk. I opened the door, but blocked the entry. I kept my distance. They looked smaller. The power they once held was gone. Maybe because for the first time, I wasn't the obedient daughter standing silently while they lectured. We brought this for Leo, my father said, holding the box out to me. One glance at the wrapping and I knew it was some expensive piece of electronics. Leo doesn't need it, I replied, not taking the gift. Clara, my mother stepped forward. We know we were wrong, about how we treated Leo, about the money. We truly regret it. And we want you to know, this isn't about money, we really feel sorry. I looked at them. Carefully. Searching for truth in their eyes. Are you sorry because you realize you were truly wrong, or because the whole family found out and turned against you? I asked, unblinking. They looked at each other, just one glance. And I had my answer. I think you should go, I said gently. I don't believe you. And I don't trust you anymore. But we're family, my mother nearly pleaded, her eyes brimming with tears. No, I shook my head. Families don't use each other. Family doesn't deceive their daughter for money. Family doesn't exclude a child from Christmas. They stepped back, clutching the gift box, then quietly turned and walked away. I watched until their car disappeared past the gate. I didn't feel sad. I just felt free. Months later, I still stood by my decision. No texts, no calls. Brenda tried to reach out too, but I had blocked her number. The money I used to send every month, I now transfer into Leo's college fund. And the strange thing is, when you cut out toxic people, you make room for healthy, beautiful relationships to grow. Aunt Susan started inviting us over for Sunday dinners. Uncle Robert hosted BBQs, and Leo got to play with his cousins. People asked genuine questions, listened to Leo, and encouraged his endless curiosity. Mom, why does Uncle Robert's pool smell weird? Leo asked one summer afternoon. That's the smell of chlorine, kiddo, Uncle Robert answered before I could, then launched into a whole explanation about sanitization and chemical reactions, and Leo was absolutely fascinated. I watched my son bloom, like a tree finally being watered with real love. No one told him he was too much. No one told him to stop asking questions. Leo started calling Alice and George Grandma and Grandpa, something I had never asked him to do. They had become our safe harbor. And now I knew. Family isn't where you're born, it's where people choose to love you like you belong. And me, I finally made the right choice. I discovered that my husband had an affair with my own sister, and my family had deliberately kept it a secret. I chose revenge. Perhaps the easiest way to begin is with an introduction and a little description of my family. My name is Maya, and I have just got the most devastating news of my life. But first, let me tell you a little bit about my family. I've always known I wasn't the favorite. Nobody ever said it directly, but you can feel it in your bones. It's the way your parents look at you against your siblings, how they communicate with you, and how they always choose them in both tiny and huge situations. My older sister, Chloe, was always the golden kid, the one who could do no wrong and received all of the love and attention, while I watched from the background. Growing up, it was painfully clear. If Chloe had a good grade, it was saved in the refrigerator. If I received a decent mark, they gave me a brief smile before returning to chatting about Chloe's accomplishments. I was her shadow. Despite everything, I never loathed her. Sure, I despised my parents putting her on a pedestal, but Chloe was my sister, and I loved her. I assumed it was not her fault that my parents treated us differently. I assumed that was enough. Even if things weren't fair in childhood, we'd figure it out as adults, and our relationship would be balanced. But I was dreadfully mistaken. 2 days ago, everything fell apart. It was meant to be a wonderful evening. My parents had asked us for dinner to celebrate Chloe's pregnancy. I felt truly thrilled for her. Chloe and her husband Liam had been trying to have a baby for a long time, and I understood how important it was to her to have a family. So I attended, despite the underlying unease I'd always had around my relatives. It was a constant reminder that I wasn't good enough, that I was constantly second behind Chloe. Ethan, my husband, was by my side, as he had done for the previous 5 years. He understood how hard my connection with my family was, and he was always my anchor, the only person who made me feel seen. Or so I thought. Dinner was normal, even enjoyable. We gathered around the table, laughing and sharing Chloe's excellent news. My parents, as predicted, were ecstatic about Chloe's pregnancy, as if she had created parenting. But this didn't surprise me anymore. I smiled and complimented her while pretending everything was okay. Then I accidentally overheard my parents talk, and my entire world crumbled. Following supper, I excused myself to visit the restroom. On my way home, I went by the kitchen and overheard my parents whispering. I should have kept walking, but something about their whispered tone stopped me. And then I heard it. My mother said they would never inform me about Chloe's error. At first, I was perplexed, wondering what mistake they were referring to. But then the answer struck me like a smack in the face. They were talking about Chloe sleeping with my husband Ethan. Apparently, it had happened months before, and they had opted not to inform me in order to protect Chloe's reputation, because she was their lovely daughter and did not deserve to have her image ruined. They described it as a simple mistake, a slip in judgment that should be forgiven, because what mattered was that Chloe became pregnant. I stood paralyzed, unable to move or breathe. The walls appeared to be closing in around me. My mind was filled with incredulity, betrayal, and wrath. My spouse, my partner, the man I trusted with my life, cheated on me with my own sister. Worse, my parents knew. They had kept it a secret because they wanted to protect Chloe rather than give me the truth. They selected her over me again. I felt like all of my years of feeling less worthy had been vindicated. They'd made their decision, and it wasn't mine. I don't even recall how I left that house that night. I dimly recall murmuring something about feeling ill and having to go. I couldn't face them, not my parents, nor Chloe, and particularly not Ethan. So I just left, got into my car, and drove. But I can't recall where I went. I simply needed to get away from them, from the reality of what I had just learned. I felt as if my entire existence was a terrible joke, that nothing made sense anymore, and that I was plummeting into an abyss with no way out. It's been 2 days, and I'm still struggling to process it. I have not faced anyone yet. I haven't spoken to Ethan much since that night. He keeps asking me what's wrong and why I'm so aloof, but I can't even look him in the eye, let alone speak to him. Every time I see him, all I can think of is him and my sister Chloe. How could he have done this to me? How could she and my parents hide it like it didn't matter, as if I didn't exist? I keep revisiting that conversation in my memory, hearing my parents tell Chloe that her mistake would not ruin her life, that it was simply a moment of weakness. But how about my life? How about my marriage? Didn't it matter? Didn't I matter? I feel erased, like I'm a supporting role in a story that should have been mine, but it's always about Chloe. They will always protect her, regardless of what she does or how much she hurts me. And now I'm gathering up the pieces, trying to find out how to move forward after everything I thought I knew has been flipped upside down. I honestly do not know what to do. I'm not sure whether I should face Ethan and demand the truth, or talk to my parents and tell them how much they've wounded me. I'm not sure who to face first. I'm not even sure whether I have the strength to face Chloe. The notion of speaking with her and hearing any explanations she may have for betraying me makes me sick to my stomach. But I can't keep living this way, pretending everything is fine when it isn't. I can't hold this secret inside, allowing it to taint my every thought and moment. Part of me wants to scream at them, telling them how much they've wounded me and damaged. But another part of me wants to leave, run away, and never look back. I'm not sure which segment to listen to. I'm not even sure whether there's a good choice here. All I know is that I am entirely broken, and I have no idea how to put myself back together. My entire life, I've felt like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't matter. And now, after all of this, it appears that has been confirmed. My parents have made it obvious that Chloe will always be their top priority, regardless of what she does or who she hurts. So where does it leave me? How can I move forward when the people who were supposed to love and protect me have repeatedly chosen someone else? I do not have the answers. I wish I had. I wish I knew what to do, how to mend it, or even how to move on. But right now, all I feel is tremendous betrayal and pain, and I have no idea how to stop it. That's why I'm here, writing this post, hoping that someone, anybody, will tell me what to do, since I feel like I'm falling apart and have no idea how to stop it. I understand that it is easy to form an opinion from the outside, and that is exactly what I am seeking for. But on the inside, it feels overwhelming. Update 1. It's been over 2 weeks since my initial post. I have had time to think, feel, and plan. I was initially paralyzed by the agony, uncertainty, and betrayal. However, that immobility has dissipated, giving way to something colder, sharper, and far more frightening. At first, I believed confronting Ethan, Chloe, and my parents would provide some closure. But now I've decided on something completely different. Yes, I will face them, but not by yelling, crying, or demanding explanations. Instead, I want them to feel the suffering I've been through. I desire vengeance. I intend to get my revenge in the most complete manner possible while adhering to the letter of the law. For the past 2 days, I have been meticulous and patient. They believe I know nothing and am a second-rate daughter and wife who simply smiles and agrees on everything. Let them continue to believe that, because in the meantime, I've been working in silence, accumulating proof to back up everything I heard that night. Betrayal always leaves a trail, even if the betrayer believes they have hidden their tracks. And I'm determined to reveal every information they thought was hidden. First, let me tell you about the baby shower. Yes, there was a baby shower. A few days after my last post, my mother contacted me in her typical happy tone, pretending nothing had occurred, as if she hadn't been a part of this tremendous betrayal. She asked if I would host Chloe's baby shower because, to my family, I am essentially a servant, and of course, I would be in charge of it. Perhaps if the circumstances were reversed, she would not have asked my sister to host this event. Yes, she wanted me to commemorate the guy who had ruined my marriage and life. The arrogance left me dumbfounded for a moment. But then it occurred to me that I could turn this to my advantage. This could be an excellent time to lay the groundwork for what's coming. Of course, I agreed. I answered sure, making sure my tone did not reveal my genuine intentions. She was overjoyed, nearly euphoric. "Chloe will be so happy," she remarked. I grinned through the phone, thinking about how thrilled Chloe would be to find out what I had planned for her. But, before I made my move, I needed to gather as much as I could. I became nearly obsessed with discovering every last secret, message, and piece of proof proving exactly what they had done to me. While Ethan slept, I went through his phone, laptop, and even his old backups. At first, I wasn't sure what I'd find. Perhaps they were clever enough to hide their footprints. However, when people believe they have control, they tend to become careless. The first piece of proof appeared in the form of a secret folder on his phone. He thought he was clever by giving it a simple name, but I knew him too well. There were photographs within. Photos of him with Chloe. And, as it turned out, it wasn't a one-time event, but rather an elaborate one. At first glance, some of the images appeared innocent, but others clearly revealed their relationship. My stomach churned as I stared at them, but I didn't stop. Over the next few evenings, I continued digging. Text messages, emails, and archived social media messages. I discovered chats between Chloe and Ethan, some from months ago, when they discussed how careful they had to be to keep me from finding out. Their remarks cut like knives, yet they also fueled me. They had been so casual about it, as if I were just an impediment in their path. But the big shock came when I discovered texts between my parents and Chloe. My mother, in particular, had been actively involved in keeping everything a secret. There were discussions about how Maya did not need to know and the significance of protecting Chloe's reputation. Chloe even provided Ethan screenshots of these communications to reassure him that my parents were on their side and didn't have to worry about me finding out. I felt ill to my stomach when reading it. They didn't care that I was their daughter. All they were concerned about was Chloe's reputation. I've saved everything. Every image, communication, and piece of evidence was now safely kept on my devices. I backed everything up just in case. I was not going to rush. I was going to wait for the right opportunity to strike. Maybe at the baby shower, maybe later. But I'd make certain that when everything came crashing down, it would be catastrophic. They wouldn't know what had hit them. Update 2. It's been about a week since my previous post, and I have so much to share, but I'm not sure where to start. Yesterday's events felt like they happened in a dream, or possibly a nightmare. It depends on whoever you ask. I spent the entire day at Chloe's baby shower, pretending to be the perfect hostess while hiding my inner turmoil. The facade was meticulously designed. I was the devoted sister, happy daughter, and faithful wife. Everyone was present. Family, friends, and Chloe's spouse. None of them had any idea of the impending chaos. The celebration itself was a lavish affair, and my mother was overjoyed, ensuring everything was perfect for tiny Chloe. My parents had no idea that the true present would be for me. A gift that will ruin the neatly crafted universe they had built. I was acutely conscious of my fast-beating heart. My pulse quickened not from exhilaration, but from the impending mayhem. As the day went, I engaged in pleasant conversations, laughed at superficial jokes, and organized the many baby gifts that stacked up on the table. All the while, I was acutely aware of the ticking time bomb about to blow. I could see Chloe enjoying the attention. Her smile would fade quickly, but the more she believed she had gotten away with it, the better my payback would be. The time comes when they cut the cake. Everyone applauded and praised her, and I felt my heart race even faster as I prepared to give Chloe with my special gift. I told everyone it came from the heart, but deep down I knew it came from the depths of my anguish. Then I stood up to address the gathering, and the room became quiet. Chloe smiled at me, clearly excited, as she grabbed for the beautifully wrapped box I had worked so hard to offer. Delicate paper and an elaborate bow were all intended to heighten anticipation and make it appear like a very valuable gift, which it was. People flocked around Chloe to get a better look as she started to open it. Inside were printed photographs of her and Ethan in highly compromising circumstances. Intimate moments captured in time. The types of photos you wouldn't want your family to view. I had deliberately chosen the most damaging ones, those that proved their betrayal in an obvious and indisputable manner. Chloe's countenance changed from joy to perplexity, then fear, as she examined the contents of the box. The atmosphere in the room changed as individuals recognized what was going on and the significance of the shot to everyone involved. Chloe, me, and my husband. But I wasn't finished yet. As rumors began, and people began to question Chloe or me, I pulled back the decorative curtains, displaying enlarged versions of similar images displayed prominently. The truth was now on display for anyone to see. A collection of betrayal, documenting the affair that wrecked my life. Chloe's face went white, blood draining from her cheeks, making her appear ghostly. Her hands trembled as she attempted to comprehend what was occurring. My parents automatically tried to interfere, but I refused to be silenced. I took a deep breath and allowed the words to flow. I recounted the entire affair, including how they had helped cover it up and pretended everything was okay while Chloe betrayed me to my husband. Chloe's husband, absolutely stunned, stormed out of the room, yelling at her, calling her a cheater, and expressing incredulity that she could do all of this. Perhaps it was a similar demonstration and emotion that I experienced as I worked through the entire affair. My parents were speechless, unable to defend their precious child this time. As I revealed the disaster Chloe had made, the universe they had carefully built around her began to crumble. Standing in the crowd, I had a peculiar feeling. A sensation of relief washed over me. Some folks offered me consolation, but I didn't need it at the time. Because I had completed the necessary tasks. So I collected my items and walked away. Update 3. 2 weeks have gone since my last update, and I believe the dust has settled sufficiently to relate what remains of my shock and astonishment at the baby shower, as well as the ramifications for all those engaged in the treachery. The night I revealed everything, I left the party as soon as I finished my presentation. I had no desire to communicate with anyone or face the reactions of individuals who had previously been my family. I had no idea what happened next until Chloe's friend, or rather, her former friend, contacted me a few days later to ask me a few things. This person, one of Chloe's closest confidants, started the talk with a tone ranging from disbelief to disgust. She told me that after what I had revealed, she had realized Chloe's true personality. In her words, if Chloe could fool her own sister with her husband, who can say she won't do the same to her? The betrayal she observed at the party had made her very skeptical, and she felt she couldn't have a friendship with someone like that. During our talk, she sought suggestions on how to examine her spouse to ensure that he was not concealing anything similar. I instructed her to closely examine his social media communications, text messages, and any interactions on his phone that appeared suspect. I also made it obvious that if she discovered anything major, I would wait for her to share. I thought many of you would want to know as well. But that wasn't everything she told me. Apparently, after I left the party, the venue had devolved into a complete battle zone. When Chloe's in-laws saw what was going on, they screamed and made accusations. Chloe's in-laws were outraged and disappointed, spitting harsh and disrespectful comments at her for what she had done. My father, with what dignity he had left, attempted to interfere to protect his daughter, arguing that Chloe was pregnant and that they shouldn't speak to her in that way. But Chloe's father-in-law didn't mince words, retorting that their lovely daughter was nothing more than a whore of Babylon. Let's just say he used a more vulgar term. That phrase struck my father like a dagger, and he lunged at Chloe's father-in-law, wanting to settle matters violently. That didn't go so well for him. Chloe's father-in-law delivered a single punch, knocking him to the ground. He did not lose consciousness, but instead lay on the floor, possibly out of embarrassment or dread of suffering another punch. Not only were the men willing to fight. Chloe's mother-in-law, outraged by what had happened, began to verbally assault my mother, who refused to back down, calling Chloe's father-in-law an ape for beating her husband. This caused the other woman to rush at her. The scene was horrific. I heard that Chloe's mother-in-law tugged my mother's hair so hard that they had to be separated. My mother ended up losing a large amount of her hair, and someone even suggested that she might start thinking about getting wigs. Several people attempted to break up the incident before it developed further. I'll admit that deep down, I regretted not remaining at the party to see how my present was received. It's the same sensation you get when you miss school on the most important day of the year. But, despite my curiosity, I realized it was for the best. I left to keep my head clear and avoid being caught up in guilt and chaos. Surprisingly, Chloe escaped this event bodily unharmed. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because she was pregnant, and all there, even the most enraged, had the self-control not to physically kill her. Though there was a good chance the baby she was carrying was my husband's, it wasn't the child's fault that its mother was such a cheater and traitor. Update 4, my ex-husband, or soon-to-be ex-husband, has made significant improvement. I served him with the divorce papers as soon as I had them processed. He was not pummeled at the party, and I believe he was clever enough to remain mute and attempt to blend in with the crowd. He stayed silent, keeping his head down as if he wished not to be noticed. Apparently, this tactic worked since he escaped the punch from Chloe's father-in-law, which he deserved more than anyone else, especially since her father-in-law was so eager to administer it. When he arrived home, he discovered that all of his stuff had been tossed out on the grass. I did not leave any of his belongings inside. Everything was on the grass, waiting for him to receive the message. He didn't say anything or knock on the door to speak with me. He simply gathered his belongings and departed. At least he took the hint. We are currently waiting to see what will happen to the house after the divorce is official. In the previous 2 weeks, neither my sister nor my family has sought to contact me. Not to apologize, nor to vent their rage on me, which does not surprise me. Even though I was the one who was most affected by all of this, aside from my father's humiliation, they lacked the guilt and regret to reach out and apologize. This verifies what I have always suspected. Whatever happens, Chloe will always be their number one priority. This public betrayal and humiliation, however devastating, do not appear to be enough to cause them to ponder. I've spent my entire life looking for a place in my family, a way to be recognized and loved, but these incidents have taught me that it will never happen. No matter how badly they harmed me or betrayed my trust, I will always be the daughter they can ignore. Update 5. I like that saying. Everyone has a plan, until they are punched in the face. And this is exactly what happened to my ex-husband. But let me not get ahead of myself and describe what has happened in the last few months. It turns out that Chloe's friend, who I assisted in her inquiry, discovered that her husband was also cheating on her, with my sister. As you would expect, she approached him right away. During the dispute, my pal mentioned that my ex was also involved in the situation. What exactly did her husband do? Without saying anything, he drove straight to my sister's house, where she was living with my ex, because they both assumed the kid she was carrying was his. What comes next is the finest part. The dude punched my ex directly in the face. So, despite avoiding a punch during the party, he eventually received what he deserved. Apparently, my ex chose to sue him for that punch, but I'm not sure what occurred, and frankly, I don't care. My sister's husband left shortly after discovering the situation and filed for divorce. That divorce has yet to be finalized, most likely due to the presence of a baby, which takes longer to complete. My divorce, on the other hand, was finalized approximately a month ago. For those of you who are wondering about the assets, the house we shared was sold, and the proceeds were split evenly. We were not required to pay alimony, and because we did not have children, the process was simplified. I believe that the fact that my divorce was resolved fast exacerbated the stress surrounding my sister. Returning to my ex, after receiving that punch in the face, he received an emotional blow when he discovered that he might not be the father of the child in my sister's womb. In an ironic turn of events, he chose to leave my sister's residence, unable to stomach the thought that she may be cheating on him. This portion makes me giggle, but it also makes me ponder about the reasoning behind adultery and people like it. How can someone who is willing to cheat on their relationship with someone else be hurt when their partner cheats on them? Perhaps I don't understand the envy in that case since, fortunately, I'm a decent person who has never been compelled to betray somebody in that way. His hypocrisy is so obvious it's almost laughable. But the situation doesn't end there, since there's an unforeseen twist. My sister's baby was born, and as you could expect, a DNA test was performed immediately. It comes out that my ex is not the father. The infant was the child of Chloe's best friend's husband, who filed for divorce after learning of the affair. What struck me was that, while this man was the father, there was probably another candidate. Knowing my sister and how she has handled things throughout this, I wouldn't be surprised if there were more contenders for paternity. Honestly, given who my dad and sister are, this is not unusual for them. It is simply another Tuesday for them. They don't care how bizarre the scenario becomes since they are so used to living in chaos and drama. And, no, neither my parents nor my sister have contacted me since. But this time, and only this time, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that it's not because they don't value me as a daughter or sister. Perhaps they're too preoccupied with the calamity they've created for themselves. Update 6. First and foremost, let me to clarify something, as it appears that some people missed the sarcasm in my previous update. When I stated I was giving my family the benefit of the doubt, I was joking. No, I don't believe they've ever actually cared, and even if there wasn't a scandal of this scale, they wouldn't bother to contact you. Moving on, my sister has had to move back in with my parents. Why? Well, the baby's biological father opted not to stay with her, and while he had also been unfaithful, I understood why. Staying with someone as untrustworthy as my sister seems like more of a punishment than a reward. So, alone and with a baby, she returned to the only location where she was still warmly welcomed, my parents' house. My sister's divorce resulted in a favorable outcome for my former brother-in-law. The house they shared was sold, and he was not required to pay child support or alimony. I believe this was the best-case scenario for him. Now he can leave this situation with no financial or personal links to my sister. It's as if life gave him a one-way ticket, and I can't imagine a happier ending for him. Chloe's buddy likewise concluded her divorce, and things appear to have settled down in terms of peace and counting punches. Despite everything that has happened, it is evident that many of the characters in this story deserve another punch. For the time being, the reality TV shows have come to an end, but the memories will live on in the minds and on the faces of all those involved. I worked hard for years to buy my first car. One day later, my brother stole the keys, took it for a ride, and completely wrecked it. I had spent my entire youth scrimping and saving, skipping vacations, ignoring impulse buys, and driving my beat-up old sedan into the ground, just so I could finally afford the one thing I'd always wanted. A brand new car, completely mine, paid for with my own hard-earned money. The moment I signed the paperwork and the dealer handed me the keys, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pure, unadulterated pride in myself. I ran my fingers along the smooth, gleaming hood, inhaled the intoxicating scent of fresh leather seats, and thought, this is mine. Every part of it, every detail, is mine. I hadn't even owned the car for a full day before my younger brother Jason decided my happiness was his for the taking. Jason, the child who'd been coddled and cosseted his entire life, had never broken a sweat for anything, never taken responsibility, and never faced a consequence that my parents couldn't sweep under the rug. He was the type to treat other people's things as if they were his by default, because that's how life had always worked for him. When I drove into my parents' driveway that evening to show off the car, Jason was already there, leaning against the garage with that familiar smirk of his. He barely even looked up from his phone when I parked. Nice ride, he said, pushing himself off the wall and sauntering over, peering through the driver's side window as if he'd already decided the car belonged to him. What's the mileage? Less than 100, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral even though I could already feel my patience wearing thin. Jason let out a low whistle, nodding appreciatively, and then, without asking, reached for the handle and pulled the door open. Let me take it for a spin. I immediately lunged to slam the door shut before he could climb in, shaking my head firmly. No way, I just got it. You're not driving it? Jazz rolled his eyes, as if I'd just told him he couldn't borrow $1. Oh, come on, Emily, don't be such a control freak. It's just a car. Exactly, I retorted. It's just a car that I busted my ass to buy. You don't get to just take it. But Jason was never the type to hear no and accept it. He just smirked, shrugged, and backed away. But there was something in his expression that sent a warning chill down my spine, as if he already had a backup plan. I should have trusted my gut. Sorry for interrupting, but please like and subscribe. That night, I left the car keys on the entryway table for a few minutes while I went upstairs to get something from my room. When I came back down, the keys were gone, and so was my car. My hands clenched into fists as the realization set in. Jason? I stormed outside, my heart hammering, but by then he was long gone, the screech of tires echoing in the distance. I pulled out my phone and called his number, but I only got voicemail, over and over again. I was still fuming when, 2 hours later, my phone finally rang, but it wasn't Jason's number, it was an unfamiliar one. I answered, bracing myself. Miss Anderson, a deep voice, calm but serious, said. This is Officer Reynolds with the County Police Department. I'm calling about a vehicle registered under your name. My stomach dropped. What's happened? There's been an accident. A pause. The driver is unharmed, but the vehicle sustained significant damage. My grip tightened on the phone. Who was driving? The officer hesitated for only a second before answering. A young man identifying himself as Jason Anderson. I didn't even remember driving to the scene of the accident. One moment, I was standing in my parents' entryway, gripping my phone with white knuckles. The next I was pulling up behind flashing police lights, my pulse a steady drum of rage. And there he was, my brother, standing next to what was left of my brand new car, arms crossed, looking utterly unfazed. The front bumper was destroyed, the hood crumpled, and one of the headlights was shattered. My beautiful perfect car was ruined, and Jason was standing there like it was nothing. I got out of my beat-up old sedan, slamming the door harder than I meant to, my hands shaking as I walked towards him. What the hell did you do? Jason finally turned to face me, and then, in the single most infuriating moment of my entire life, he smirked. Tough luck, he said, shrugging as if he'd just dropped my ice cream cone, not totaled my car. But hey, don't freak out. Mom and Dad will make you forgive me. I felt those words hit me like a slap in the face. Mom and Dad will make me forgive him. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an acknowledgement of what he'd done. It was a smug, arrogant declaration that no matter how angry I was, no matter how much damage he'd caused, it wouldn't matter, because my parents would smooth things over, just like they always did. I took a slow, measured breath, forcing down my rage, my hands clenched at my sides, my pulse thundering in my ears. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let him get away with it this time. Not this time. Has your sibling ever thought they could get away with anything? Tell me in the comments. I'm done leaking. I woke up the next morning with a splitting headache, my body still tense with the sheer frustration of the night before. My mind replayed every detail of that awful encounter at the crash site, my brother's smirking face haunting me like a nightmare that refused to end. My car, the brand new, hard-earned car, was gone, destroyed in an instant by someone who had never worked a day in his life, someone who had never faced a single consequence, someone who genuinely believed that my anger was nothing more than an inconvenience to his day. I knew, even before I stepped out of bed, that my parents would be calling me, that they'd demand a conversation, that they'd try to smooth this over like they always did, as if Jason's actions were just another minor mistake that we could forget about if I'd only be reasonable like a good daughter should be. Sure enough, the moment I checked my phone, I saw 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and a text message from Jason that was so arrogant, I had to read it twice to believe my own eyes. Stop being dramatic, Em. It's just a car. Mom and Dad said they'll sort it out, so stop acting like it's the end of the world. No apology, no remorse, not even the slightest acknowledgement that he'd done anything wrong. Just pure entitlement dripping from every word, as if the real problem wasn't that he'd stolen and wrecked my property, but that I had dared to make a big deal out of it. I swallowed my rage, forcing myself to breathe slowly, reminding myself that getting worked up over a text message wasn't going to help me right now. Jason was always like this, and I knew exactly where he'd learned it. I drove to my parents' house. My knuckles were white as I gripped the steering wheel of my ancient backup car. My stomach churned with a mixture of anger and weariness, already knowing exactly how this conversation was going to go. I walked in without knocking, dispensing with pleasantries, finding my parents sitting stiffly at the kitchen table, their expressions a perfect blend of forced concern and thinly veiled exasperation, as if I was the problem here, as if my reaction was what needed to be fixed. Jason sat slumped on one of the chairs, scrolling through his phone, looking completely unbothered, as if he was waiting for this whole thing to blow over so he could get on with his life, while I was left to pick up the pieces of what he'd ruined. My mother sighed heavily, setting down her coffee cup as if she was already exhausted by my presence, rubbing her temples as if she was the victim in all of this. Emily, honey, we need to talk about the situation, because this anger you're holding on to isn't healthy for anyone. I felt something cold in my chest, something quiet but dangerous, A slow-burning fury that I'd carried for years but had never fully allowed myself to acknowledge until now. My anger? I repeated, my voice strangely calm, my hands resting on the back of an empty chair, gripping the wood so tightly that my fingers ached. You think my anger is the problem here? My father let out a long sigh, exchanging a quick glance with my mother. Their silent communication made it painfully clear that they were united in this, that their decision had already been made before I'd even walked through the door. Sweetheart, he said, his voice dripping with condescension, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum over a broken toy. It's just a car. Jason didn't mean to crash it, and we don't think it's fair to punish him so harshly for something that was clearly an accident. I felt something inside me snap, something that had been held together by sheer force of will for years, something that had been stretched and pulled and torn one too many times. He stole it, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, because if I let myself feel anything, I knew I would explode. I told him no. He took my keys anyway. He stole my car, wrecked it, and then smirked at me because he knew you'd cover for him, just like you always do. Jason sighed dramatically, finally looking up from his phone, rolling his eyes as if the entire conversation wasn't worthy of him. Jesus, Em, you're acting like I murdered someone, he muttered, shaking his head, his arrogance radiating from him in waves. I messed up, okay? Get over it? My mother reached out, placing a gentle hand on mine, her eyes pleading, her expression carefully crafted into something that looked like love but was really just manipulation wrapped in a prettier package. Emily, he's your brother, she said softly, tilting her head as if she was speaking to a toddler in need of correction. I know you're upset, but family forgives, sweetheart. That's what we do. We forgive each other. I stared at her, at the sheer audacity of those words, at the way she had so effortlessly placed the responsibility on me to fix what Jason had done, as if my feelings were an inconvenience, as if my hard work meant nothing, as if my sacrifices didn't matter, as long as Jason was happy. I realized in that moment that I had spent my entire life being conditioned to accept this treatment, to believe that my needs came second, that my anger was unjustified, that my pain was something I had to swallow quietly for the sake of keeping the family peace. But I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into submission this time. So, I did something I'd never done before. I smiled. It was small, just a flicker of amusement, but it was enough to make my mother pause, enough to make Jason glance at me with something almost resembling suspicion. You know what, I said, my voice light, my expression deceptively calm, because I'd already made up my mind. You're absolutely right, Mom. Family forgives, and I don't want to hold on to this anger anymore. I watched as relief flooded their faces, as Jason's smirk returned, as they all leaned back in their chairs, convinced that they'd won, that they had successfully broken me down into the version of myself that they preferred. But they had no idea what I was planning. They had no idea that behind my pleasant smile and my easy agreement, I was already putting things in motion. I was going to make Jason pay for what he did. He just didn't know it yet. I had spent my entire life being told that family comes first, that forgiveness is a virtue, that holding grudges only leads to bitterness. But as I sat in my car outside the insurance office, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, I realized that those rules had only ever applied to me. Jason had never been expected to forgive or compromise or sacrifice, because Jason had never faced real consequences. Not once. Not ever. Not in all the years he had coasted through life on a wave of other people cleaning up his messes. But that was about to change. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the one left picking up the pieces. When I walked into the insurance office, the air conditioning blasted against my skin, a stark contrast to the fire simmering in my chest, the calculated rage that had been fueling me since the moment Jason had sneered in my face and told me our parents would make me forgive him. The woman at the desk barely looked up as she typed something into her computer, her voice clipped and professional as she asked how she could help. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before speaking, knowing that once I set this in motion, there would be no going back. I need to file a claim for my car, I said, keeping my tone even, my expression carefully neutral. She nodded, clicking a few more times before glancing up at me. Was it an accident? Do you have a police report? Yes, there's a report, I said, my pulse steady, my decision unwavering. And I need to report it as unauthorized use. That made her pause. She blinked once, tilting her head slightly as if trying to determine whether she'd misheard me. Unauthorized use, she repeated, her voice laced with a note of curiosity. Are you saying your vehicle was stolen? I could have said yes, but I knew better than to lie outright, especially when the truth was just as damning. I never gave permission for him to take it, I clarified, choosing my words carefully, making sure there was no room for misinterpretation. I explicitly told him he couldn't drive my car, and he took it anyway. That's theft, isn't it? The woman hesitated for only a second before nodding slowly, typing something into her system, her gaze flicking towards the screen as she read through what I assumed were company policies on situations like this. If you can provide proof that you denied him permission and he took the vehicle regardless, then yes, this qualifies as unauthorized use. I reached into my purse, pulling out my phone, my fingers moving swiftly as I pulled up the text messages from Jason, the ones where I'd told him no, the ones where he'd laughed it off like my words meant nothing. I turned the screen towards her, watching as she read over the messages, her eyebrows raising slightly before she nodded again. This should be sufficient, she said, her voice now purely professional, her fingers moving over the keyboard with precision. Since you're filing for unauthorized use, the liability will not fall on you, it will transfer to the driver. The liability would transfer to Jason. The reality of it sank in slowly, like warm honey drizzling over the cold steel of my fury, coating it in something rich and satisfying. Jason, who had spent his entire life escaping responsibility, was finally going to have to answer for something. Jason, who had laughed in my face and told me I would have to forgive him, was about to learn what it felt like when the world didn't bend to his will. How much are we talking about? I asked, keeping my voice steady, though inside, my heart was thrumming with a strange, unfamiliar thrill. The woman glanced at her screen, adjusting her glasses before answering. Well, given the extent of the damage, the estimated total he'll be responsible for is somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. As I inhaled $30,000 to $40,000, I felt victorious. Jason was never punished, simply slapped on the wrist. I wouldn't move to stop that weight from falling on him. After leaving work, the sun was brighter, the air was sharper, and I felt happy for the first time since this nightmare began. I felt strong. Feeling free. Later that night, I scrolled through social media in my apartment, narrowing my eyes when I saw Jason's latest post, a photo of him and his friends at a bar with drinks and his usual arrogant caption. A few cocktails can fix a bad day. Some need to relax and move on. Life's too short for small worries. Little things? The sheer audacity of it sent a ripple of laughter through me, a sound so foreign that it startled me for a moment before I leaned back against the couch, shaking my head in amusement. Jason felt he won. He thought it was over. He believed our parents had saved him again, that everything would be well, and that I had swallowed my anger and moved on as usual. Before the insurance claim was approved, Jason wouldn't know I wasn't letting it go. Jason learned the hard way this time, and he discovered what I did too late. At dinner, I felt their expectations suffocating me, as if they had decided this would be my night to conform. My mother decorated the table like a holiday gathering with candles, roasted chicken, and buttery mashed potatoes to underscore that this was a family night of reconciliation and a scene meticulously constructed to smooth over an unneeded disagreement. My father led the table with his usual controlled yet easygoing demeanor. However, I understood why we were here, why this supper had been scheduled so soon after the accident, and why Jason sat across from me with that insufferable smirk and his phone next to his plate, as if he couldn't pretend it mattered. I knew it was coming. The speech they had all practiced, the words they would use to convince me that my wrath was unwarranted, that my reaction was overblown, and that Jason deserved my forgiveness because he was family. I sat there with my hands in my lap and a large envelope between my fingers under the table, feeling only an uncomfortable serenity because, unlike them, I knew how this evening would end. Jason spoke first, his voice dripping with adolescent arrogance, his remarks condescending, and his smirk growing as he sat back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest. Have you calmed down? Or are you still having a tantrum about a foolish car? I didn't notice the comments since I anticipated him to make a joke and try to make me look crazy in front of our parents. I tilted my head, giving him a weak, unreadable smile, watching as his confidence grew in the face of what he thought was submission, and my parents looked happy, thinking they had won. Emily, sweetheart, I know this has been a stressful situation for you, but we really need to put this behind us as a family, my mother said with a dramatic sigh, sounding exasperated but gentle, as if she were the only one with the patience to deal with me. Jason made a mistake, but your anger won't help. My father, ever the voice of reason and always level-headed and realistic, nodded as he carved his chicken without glancing up from his plate. Emily, life is too short for this. The car is just a car. Things can be replaced, but not family. Jason seemed to enjoy my apparent defeat, his ego growing with each passing second and his sneer getting more unpleasant. He swirled his fork, seeming to frown. Seriously, calm. I swear you always overreacted and exaggerated. I crashed a car, not your life. You'll heal. After he laughed, my mother comforted me across the table, and my father nodded in approval of Jason's words. I cautiously removed the envelope from under the table and presented it to Jason. All three stopped when thick paper touched polished wood. Jason hardly looked up, shaking his head and rolling his eyes like I was being dramatic, like whatever I was about to do couldn't possibly be worth his time. Is this an angry letter about how I injured you? Read it, I said simply, my voice even, my expression unreadable. My tone must have grabbed his attention because, for the first time that night, his delight diminished and his smirk faltered as he hesitated before tearing open the envelope. After pulling out the papers and scanning the phrases across the top, his face lost color so quickly that it was almost delightful to watch, almost poetic in its irony. I watched in silence as his hands tightened around the pages, as his mouth opened and closed without sound, as his entire posture shifted from smug arrogance to quiet dawning horror. My mother frowned, confusedly staring between us, tightening her fingers on mine. Emily, what's this? Jason muttered, wrinkled documents in his hand. You did what? I sipped my wine, letting the stillness make them uncomfortable and weigh Jason's shoulders before speaking softly and politely. Brother, the insurance report is final. The one that officially declares you guilty. Tension suffocated the air instantaneously. The truth hit my parents. My father looked up from his plate, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth, his eyes sharp and calculating, trying to figure out how Jason had gone from untouchable to accountable. My mother removed her palm from mine and glanced through the papers in despair, her breath quickening as she read the black ink numerals. For the first time, Jason looked afraid, and I was more pleased than ever. Jason pulled back from the table, shaking the cutlery, and his chair scraped loudly across the floor. He gasped, his face contorted in surprise and rage, and his hands crumpled the insurance paper. He remained there, his chest rising and falling, glaring at me with something that seemed almost like betrayal, as if I had wronged him by refusing to roll over and accept what he had done, as if my boldness in forcing him face the repercussions of his actions was the actual. His voice was low and wrathful when he spoke. Emily, this isn't funny. Tell me you're kidding. I waited to respond, watching his face flash worry and looking from me to our parents like he expected them to intercede before things got out of hand. My mother's lips were slightly parted, her fingers held her blouse, and her gaze darted around the documents in front of her, looking for a way out or information to end this. Always calm, my father breathed deeply and placed his palms on the table. Though steady, his voice was dangerously close to frustration. Emily, he murmured, his gaze piercing and weighted with expectation, as usual when he wanted me to fold. This is too far. That sibling retribution is severe and vengeful. Jason chuckled bitterly, raking his fingers through his hair as he left the table and paced like a caged beast, shaking his head in bewilderment. This is ridiculous, you're ruining my life over a car. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed across my chest, expressionless, voice calm. No, Jason, I won't wreck your life, I won't clean up your trash this time. My mother inhaled sharply, her hand flying to her chest, as if I had physically struck her, her eyes wide with disbelief, as if she couldn't believe I was refusing to play the role she had assigned me since childhood. The responsible one, the one who forgave, smoothed things over, and sacrificed so Jason never had to. Sweetheart, this is going to follow him for years, she muttered, shivering, her fingers closing around the papers as if to erase them. The financial load of insurance claims can ruin a person's credit, future, and ability to... Mom, I interjected, my voice harsher, my tolerance eroding, my hands pressing against the table to prevent erupting. So he can coast through life without consequences. So he can take everything he wants without bothering about others. To keep letting you and Dad shield him from reality. Jason smacked his hands into his chair back, lips gritting, body so tense I thought he would break in half. He exclaimed, "You're honestly acting like I killed someone," his eyes burning and voice quivering. "My error. Your car was stolen and wrecked. I was a jerk about it, I realize what happened, but you..." He shook the papers in my mother's hands, rageful. "You attempted to make things worse for me." Those words sparked a hidden anger I had been holding for years. I slowly stood up, staring at him, my voice quiet but immovable, my rage steely and exact. "If you didn't care when I lost what I worked for, why should I care now that you're losing something?" The words hit him harder than I expected, knocking the breath from his lungs, his expression momentarily faltering, a flicker of something almost like regret flashing across his face, but it was gone just as quickly, buried beneath layers of entitlement, of anger, of the unwavering belief that I was the one being unfair. My father exhaled and stroked his temples as if my cave reluctance frustrated him. "Emily, I know you're mad, but this is wrong. The family. Nobody hurts each other." Shaking my head, I laughed sourly with crossed arms. None of us hurt each other? Dad, that's amusing because you let Jason hurt me. Jason scowled and grabbed his hair like he was pulling it out. He murmured, I don't have that amount of money, quivering his voice as he realized, how am I expected to pay? For the first time that night I smiled, but it was cold, hard, and unforgiving. Figure it out, I said, turning my back on him and striding toward the door, refusing to look back or show him any hesitation in my expression. My mother yelled after me, pleading with me to think this through, be sensible and not tear the family apart, but I didn't stop, turn, or delay. Jason stole from me and would return it for the first time, like it or not. I could imagine Jason pacing in his overpriced apartment, running his hands through his hair, calling our parents every hour to fix this, just like they had fixed everything else for him, never considering that maybe this was too much. Days passed, but Jason didn't call, text, or try to reach out. I knew my parents had money, but I knew they couldn't spend $40,000 without sacrificing, digging into their security accounts, and upsetting their comfortable lifestyles. I know my parents dislike discomfort. When Jason arrived at my flat, I recognized him without looking through the peephole. My assumptions were confirmed by the violent hammering on my door, the impatient huff of breath from the other side, and the whining through the wood. I waited to answer, letting him simmer, letting the stillness make him worry if I would even acknowledge him, and letting him feel my rage and powerlessness when he stole my car and smashed it without consideration. When I answered the door, I saw him looking disheveled with larger circles under his eyes, his normally confident posture somewhat stooped, and his fingers twitching at his sides, like he was barely keeping himself together. I leaned against the doorframe, crossed my arms, arched an eyebrow, and looked neutral. Something wrong, Jason? His jaw clenched at my words, his eyes burning with something dark, frightening, and like a last-ditch attempt at control. You must undo this, he said in a quiet, anxious voice. I don't care what you want, remove this. I breathed calmly through my nose, shaking my head slightly, my countenance consistent and my patience non-existent. It's done, I said calmly. You'd need a lawyer and $30,000 to fight it, and we know you don't have either. For a fleeting second, I saw something in his face shatter, a tiny fracture in his lifelong map of confidence, a flare of pure, unfiltered panic he couldn't control. As swiftly as it emerged, it was gone, replaced by wrath, resentment, and his usual protective attitude when things went wrong. The loud, bitter chuckle came as he ran both hands through his hair before lowering them to his sides, shoulders strained, breathing irregular. You hate me so much? He demanded, his voice increasing and his composure eroding. You really believe I deserve my life destroyed over a car? I inclined my head, eyeing him with a chilly, detached, and apathetic enjoyment. Jason, you wrecked my automobile without thinking. Why should I worry about damaging your bank account? He clenched his fists, flared his nostrils, shook with rage, and cried out in despair. This is unjust, Emily. You're punishing me for something minor. Okay, my error. And foolish error. Your actions are evil, premeditated, and insane. I felt my lips twitch, not quite a smile, not quite anything at all, just a small, satisfied acknowledgement of the irony of the moment, of the way Jason was finally experiencing something he had never once considered before. Accountability. You'll figure it out, I muttered, shifting my weight onto one foot and speaking gently, almost dismissively. You always do that? Jason had nothing to say for the first time in his life when his phone buzzed in his pocket before I could close the door. I saw his expression change into fear, his fingers trying to get it out, and his eyes scanning the screen with uncertainty and dread. Leaning nonchalantly against the doorframe, I saw his expression darken, jaw tighten, and fingers hold the phone so firmly that his knuckles turned white. What's wrong, Jason? His mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to say something, but no words came out, just a sharp, uneven breath, just the sound of his own world crumbling around him, and I knew in that exact moment that he had finally gotten the message I had been waiting for him to receive. The one from his employer, informing him that his reckless behavior had raised concerns, explaining that his recent promotion was now being re-evaluated, and making it clear that Jason was totally alone for the first time. I didn't wait for him to look up at me, see his complete understanding, or hear his pitiful justification or desperate appeal. I gently closed the door in his face with a leisurely, knowing, happy smile. Always overlooked, even after years of supporting my parents. Even when my son was in the hospital, they still chose my sister over us. My son is in the emergency room, I texted. We are busy with Megan, my mother said, before saying something nasty about my son. So I terminated all of their house payments, vehicle loans, and credit cards. I stood in the hallway of my childhood home, my gaze drawn to the framed images on the wall, my sister's graduation, her wedding day, and the birth of her first kid. My parents were beaming with delight in every shot. Any indication of my personal successes was conspicuously absent. A familiar tightness developed in my gut. After 35 years, you'd think I'd be over it. My mother's voice came from the kitchen. "Sharon, is that you? Come give me a hand with these dishes." I halted. I didn't come here to clean the dishes. I had come to draw boundaries. When I entered the kitchen, my mother was hurriedly arranging an appetizer dish. Megan's party, of course. My sister had recently been promoted to department manager at a nearby bank, a position she had obtained through my father's connections. "Can you finish these while I get ready?" she asked, drying her hands on a towel before waiting for my response. "Your father picked up the wrong crackers. Megan prefers sesame, not plain." I simply nodded and took her position at the counter. Same story, different situation. My phone rang with a message from Diane, my ex-sister-in-law. "Did you tell them yet?" I had not. How do you tell your parents that you're cutting them off financially after years of support? How do you explain that their sole grandson recently finished a family tree project that did not include them? The front door banged closed. Heavy footsteps approached. "Sharon," my father said, scarcely glancing my way. "Where's your mother?" "Megan will be here in an hour." My chest tightened. "She's getting ready." He nodded once before disappearing into the living room without saying anything. I slowly arranged the crackers, remembering how many times I had stood in this kitchen, waiting for acceptance that never came. Despite my full scholarship to USC, promotion to senior analyst, and the birth of my son, Max, nothing could divert their attention away from Megan. She had always been their darling kid, the one they had after years of heartbreaking miscarriages, the one they had long given up on having. I was only a trial run, a practice attempt. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn what she had so easily received, their admiration, attention, and pride. When Justin walked out on me for a coworker 3 years ago, I expected my parents to step up. Their daughter had unexpectedly become a single mother, and she clearly needed help. Instead, they questioned whether I was responsible for the marriage's demise. Had I concentrated too much on my career? Had I ignored my role as a wife? It wasn't them who gave assistance, it was Justin's parents, Diane and Brent, who are no longer my in-laws but remain my true family. They brought Max up from school, looked after him on weekends when my profession needed me to travel, and showered him with affection and attention. Meanwhile, my parents had been too absorbed with other matters. Until 6 months ago, the unexpected shift had taken me off guard. Suddenly, they called every week to inquire about Max, invited us over for Sunday dinners, and offered to babysit. I really wanted to believe it meant anything. Perhaps they'd now recognized what they'd been missing all these years. Perhaps they'd finally chosen to be present as grandparents. Then Megan got promoted, and everything became plain. They had not changed. They simply needed money. My mother returned to the kitchen, wearing a new shirt that I had paid for. "Did you finish the appetizers? Megan will be here any minute now." I tilted my head and slid the tray in her direction. "We need to talk about something." Her expression changed quickly, from delight to anxiety. "What is it? Can't this wait until after the event?" "It could, but it shouldn't," I answered, my voice more firm than I expected. "I'm stopping all financial contributions." Her face had lost all color. "What financial contributions?" As if she had no knowledge, as if I hadn't been covering their car loan for half a decade, as if I hadn't taken care of the cost of the roof replacement last summer, the property taxes, the vacation to Hawaii. My hands trembled slightly, but I pressed them firmly to the counter. The car loan, the credit accounts, the home insurance, everything. She stared at me, her lips opening and shutting, looking for words. "Why would you do this, after all we've done for you?" A bitter, humorless chuckle erupted before I could contain it. "Oh, and what exactly have you done for me?" "We raised you, we made sure you had food to eat. At the very least." She was seeking to take credit for basic parental responsibilities. "When Justin left, who actually supported me? When Max was sick and needed to get to his follow-up appointments, who helped get him there? Who stepped in when I was promoted? Who even acknowledged it? They weren't there. Never them." My father strode into the threshold, his brow furrowed. "What's going on here?" My mother turned to face him, her voice rising in wrath. "Sharon says she's cutting us off financially, after everything we've done for her." His face clouded. "Is this about that situation? We already explained it." "It's about everything," the words gushed forth, years of disappointment, neglect, and understanding flooding forth. It's about Max calling Diane grandma because she actually treats him like one. It's about you two skipping his birthday to go on Megan's vacation. It's about me needing emergency surgery, and you refusing to pick up your own grandson because Megan had dinner 3 weeks ago. Appendicitis. I'd been brought to the ER, barely awake from the pain. My sole clear thought was that Max was alone at after-school care, waiting for someone to take him up. Naturally, my first call was to my folks. "We're at Megan's promotion dinner," my mother replied, displeasure pouring from her voice. "Can't his father get him?" Justin was visiting Seattle with his new bride. I could scarcely communicate through the anguish. "Well, we can't leave now?" Megan would be devastated. Then came the ultimate blow. "He's just so much work sometimes, a burden. My child, their grandson, is a nuisance." Diane, on the other hand, had responded very instantly. She'd dropped everything. She not only picked up Max but also stayed with me in the hospital overnight, rearranging waiting room chairs to build a makeshift bed where he might sleep. That was the moment when I realized the difference between responsibility and love, blood and actual family. My father's voice brought me back into the present. "You're overreacting? We couldn't leave Megan's dinner. You know how much it meant to her. More important than their grandchild being alone and scared? More important than their daughter's hasty surgery?" "I'm done," I said quietly but firmly. "No more financial support, no more pretending. You don't get to use me when it benefits you and discard me when it doesn't." My mother's face crumpled, not with regret, but with calculating. "The car payment is due in a few days, and your father's medication. Megan's new pay could cover it, or they could finally tap into their retirement savings, which they had been hoarding while I was financing their lifestyle. Not my responsibility anymore." The front door opened, and Megan's cheery voice boomed out. "Mom, Dad, I brought champagne." That was my cue to depart. I grabbed my purse off the countertop. "Sharon, wait," my mother pleaded in despair. "You can't do this to us?" But I could and was. I passed past Megan in the corridor, noticing the look of perplexity on her face. "Sharon, I didn't know you were coming to my celebration." I wasn't. I had only come to withdraw my final emotional investment, the last traces of care for people who had never truly seen me. "Congratulations on the promotion," I remarked, sincere in tone. Megan's accomplishments had never been the issue. The real difficulty had always been our parents' refusal to accept both of their children. Her expression flickered with apprehension. "Thanks. Are you heading out already?" I gave a quick nod, refusing to rely on my voice any longer. Allow them to explain themselves, and let them deal with the consequences of their own actions. The ride home was weird, like drifting through a haze. Tears welled up, but they were not from grief, but from relief. The weight I'd carried for years, continually searching for unconditional love, had finally been removed. Max was at Sharon's home. My previous mother-in-law had sent me images of him covered in baking flour, genuine joy mirrored in his eyes, and happiness in every shot. Love, genuine and unvarnished. Family isn't about responsibility or shared blood. It's about the people that stay, the ones who accept you for who you are. 3 months went by. No phone calls or manipulative messaging, absolute quiet. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, my phone screen displayed my mother's name. My finger hovered above the decline button, but curiosity prevailed. I picked it up. "Karen," she said in a stiff tone, her words carefully chosen. "We need to talk about this situation." The situation refers to their financial difficulties without my support. There's nothing left to discuss. A beat of quiet. Then, her voice dripped with contempt. "Megan refuses to help us, saying we need to learn how to handle our own expenses." The venom in her tone was unmistakable. "The car was taken away yesterday, and the mortgage is 2 months late." "Not my concern, not anymore." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and a little part of me was, because I was raised to feel that their comfort and well-being were my responsibility. "You can't just leave us like this. We're your parents." The link is biological, not emotional. They had never fulfilled their responsibilities as parents in the ways that mattered. "I have to go. Max has soccer practice." "Karen, don't." I terminated the conversation and blocked the number. Across the kitchen, Max was working on his school assignment, a family tree. "How's it going, kiddo?" I inquired, leaning in. At the top, he had sketched Sharon and Brent, labeled Grandma and Grandpa. Below them, Mom and Dad, were written under mine and Justin's names, and at the bottom, himself. "There is no Megan, nor are there maternal grandparents." I carefully questioned, "Is this everyone in our family?" He nodded with confidence. "These are the ones who love us. Simple, profound, and true. That night, after Max had fallen asleep, I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine. A gentle breeze swept on my skin as I considered inheritance. Not cash or property, but the emotional heritage carried down through generations, the concepts taught in us about love, value, and relationships. My parents had inherited their own traumas, their mistaken belief that love had to be earned, and that children were obliged to their parents rather than cherished by them. But cycles do not have to reoccur. Patterns can be rewritten. Max would inherit something different from me. The unshakable belief that love is not a transaction, that family is chosen, and that the most essential thing is simply being present. Sharon's phone vibrated with a message. Brian's making his famous chili this Sunday. Are you and Max coming? I smiled as I replied back. Wouldn't miss it. This was my legacy now. No shame, no responsibility, just choice, connection, and love given freely and totally. For the first time in my life, I felt fully abundant in what really mattered. Looking back, I could see the pattern clearly. The persistent pursuit, the never-ending fight, the frantic want to be acknowledged. My sense of value has always been assessed in terms of their validation, or lack thereof. Every milestone had been a silent request. Notice me, care about me, and acknowledge me. My childhood room's walls had originally been covered with academic diplomas, spelling bee medals, and math competition trophies, all of which had accumulated dust while my parents joyfully attended Megan's soccer matches, dancing performances, and mundane school functions. When I was accepted to USC on a full scholarship, my father simply sneered at the letter of admission. California? That's too far away. And who is supposed to assist your mother with the household? Not you, Megan. She was too focused on being the center of their universe. I left anyway. I worked my way through graduate school, developed a job in finance, and became self-sufficient. Then I met Justin, charismatic, confident Justin, who had a loving glance and the inexplicable capacity to make me feel like the most important person in any situation. His family immediately welcomed me. Holiday gatherings where my opinions were valued, weekend cookouts where my ideas were heard. His mother, Diane, merely called to check in. His father, Brent, taught me how to change the oil in my automobile. It was strange, this easy acceptance, this genuine interest in me. When we married, my parents found excuses to complain about everything: the venue, the date, the meal. Megan, who served as my maid of honor, appeared uninterested during the ceremony. My parents left early, citing Megan's early morning appointment the next day. Justin's parents stayed until the very end, assisting with the cleanup and welcoming me as if I had always belonged to their family. Mark's presence should have altered everything. He was their first grandchild, yet they only visited once, for less than an hour. My mother had clumsily held him before swiftly giving him back. He resembles Justin, she had said, as if this justified her emotional detachment. Diane and Brent, however, were different. They brought home-cooked meals, offered to stay overnight during the exhausting first few weeks, and held Max for hours so I could rest, shower, and feel normal again. Justin then walked away, sending a text message rather than having a face-to-face talk. Sharon discovered me huddled up on the bathroom floor, sobbing. Sharon packed an overnight bag for Max. Sharon took us both into her house as I tried to understand the breakdown of my marriage. How did my folks respond? A single telephone call. My mother's tone had been uncomfortably near to satisfaction. Men don't appreciate women who prioritize their careers. I warned you. As if my drive had been the fault, as if I had somehow deserved to be left behind. The divorce was painful. Justin fought for financial assets but showed little interest in custody. He sought independence from duty. Sharon and Brian were stuck in the middle, divided between their love for their son and their displeasure with his decisions. You're still family, Brian had assured me with unflinching confidence. That doesn't change. Mark is our grandson. You're his mother. The equation is simple. Simple for them, but unfathomable to my own parents. As legal fees piled up, single parenthood, full-time employment, and the stress of court hearings became too much, I ultimately turned to them. I asked for aid, only temporarily, until things steadied. My father reluctantly wrote a check, small and begrudging. Don't rely on this. We're not a financial institution. However, when their own vehicle broke down the following month, they contacted us quickly. Can you cover this? Just this once, just until we're back on track. That one time turned into countless times. Their demands grew, my limits dwindled, and deep inside, I held onto a stupid, silent dream that if I simply gave enough, sacrificed enough, they would finally care about me the way they cared about Megan. Pathetic, transparent, and desperate, but I couldn't stop. Not until the crisis, not until he's such a burden, did I finally see the truth. It had never been love. It had always been an exchange, and my financial support had always served to buy their fleeting attention. Never their devotion, never their genuine concern. That understanding split something deep within me, yet it also provided me with release. I no longer needed to prove that I was worthy of love. I already had it. From Max, Sharon, and Brian. From friends who truly cared, colleagues who respected me, and the family I had created rather than the one I was born into. 1 week after leaving my parents' house, my phone rang, and Megan's name flashed across the screen, an uncommon event. We only communicated about twice a year, and our conversations were courteous but disconnected. "What did you say to Mom and Dad?" Her tone was angry and defensive. "They're spiraling over money." My reply was simple. "No more financial aid, no more enabling. They have their precious favorite, she can step up now." The stillness from her end had been awful. "They think you're being cruel, that you're getting revenge for the past." But was it really cruel to stop emptying myself for their sake? Was it actually vengeance to finally hold them responsible for years of emotional neglect? "I'm not punishing anyone," I had said. "I'm simply finished pretending." Megan had sighed, a sound both tired and familiar. "They're never going to change, you know. They've always been like this." We made a rare acknowledgement, a common knowledge of the roles we'd been assigned before we even had a choice, her as the cherished one, me as the disregarded. "I know they won't change," I responded. "But I have." Another pause. Then, "Good for you." 2 simple words, but perhaps the most genuine thing she'd spoken to me in years. After we hung up, I thought about Megan's reality. Did she feel their expectations in a different way? Did being the preferred child impose its own invisible burdens? It didn't excuse her role in my marginalization, but it did help me understand why she did. We were both cast in roles that we had never consented to perform. Months after cutting financial links, I finally understood what true freedom entailed, not just freedom from responsibility, but also freedom from seeking acceptance from people who were incapable of providing it. My worth had never been determined by their recognition, my value had never been linked to their acceptance. I had always been enough. They just didn't see it. Mark ran into the kitchen, interrupting my thoughts. "Mom, Grandma Sharon says she's making spaghetti tonight. Can we go now?" Grandma Sharon. A title gained not by blood, but by love, presence, and a million small acts of kindness. "Of course, buddy, grab your shoes." As he sprinted toward the door, a great sensation of gratitude washed over me. For this bright, resilient youngster, for the family we had built out of choice rather than duty, and for the profound wisdom that had arisen from struggle. Sometimes the most significant lessons come from what we learn through pain, the desire to break cycles, be better, and create something new. My parents had shown me the type of mother and human I refused to become. And for that, weirdly, I felt grateful. As I drove approaching Sharon and Brian's house, Mark happily conversing beside me, I felt something click into place. The journey from craving for acceptance to finding peace, from seeking affirmation in others to finding it inside myself, had come full circle. I'd been carrying the weight of inheritance, emotional debts, ingrained routines, and suffocating expectations for far too long. But I'd finally let them go. And what was left was lighter, purer, and completely mine. Family, love, belonging, not in transactions, not duties, not desperate attempts to establish my worth. But it was a purposeful and intentional choice, based on the peaceful assurance that I was finally where I was supposed to be.